Chapter 22. After Su Shenxing emptied his pockets to prove that he had no money except for those coins, the Earth God decided to work for free. But that pitiful expression is super annoying. Su Shenxing complained even though he saved a few coins. Because Emoli didn't have the ability to fly, he was still dizzy from the flying sword. Therefore, Su Shenxing could only run and jump on the roof with Emoli as before. He hoped that no one would see this scene, otherwise tomorrow's headline would be Spider-Man in Jiangjin City. This time, Qin Xingyan didn't rush back on the flying sword. Instead he followed Su Shenxing leisurely. That Earth God meant well, the girl said with a smile. Although she didn't belong to the same system as the Earth God, as a cultivator she still had a certain degree of respect for these existences. By the way, Qin Xingyan, don't you think that there are more and more monsters and other messy things recently? Su Shenxing asked gloomily. In the past 3 years, there were more things than during this period. Since the ghost cultivator released his ancestor in Jiangjin, the abnormal events in Jiangjin had shown an explosive growth. Clam monsters and Cheongqi were the best examples. In the past 3 years, the total number of monsters that Su Shenxing killed was probably less than during this period. I also felt strange about this, so I did some investigation. When it comes to business, Qin Xingyan became a little more serious. The night wind blew across the girl's cheeks, making her long black hair flutter. Because she might encounter a battle, she didn't wear the heavy black-rimmed glasses that she usually used to cover her face. At this time, under the starry sky, the girl sitting on the flying sword had a different kind of beauty. Recently, there has been a subtle increase in the amount of spiritual energy in Jiangjin City and its surrounding areas. Although it's not as bright as a lamp in the dark night, it's still a considerable temptation for most supernatural creatures. It will make them instinctively approach this area. So that's how it is. I thought I suddenly became the main character. Su Shenxing, who still didn't know much about Reiki, laughed and said, "You see, all kinds of things often happen around the protagonist. For example, a certain elementary school detective was constantly surrounded by murders. After getting along with Su Shenxing for some time, the girl, who understood him to a certain extent, ignored his jesting and continued. In addition to attracting supernatural creatures, a large amount of spirit qi will also produce some supernatural phenomena. This is why there were many incredible stories in ancient times, but in modern times, there are only a few urban legends left." Su Shenxing raised his hand, which startled Emoli, who was playing dead. The little girl hugged Su Shenxing tightly like an octopus. "Mr. Qin, I have a question." "Student Su, please speak." "You've said so much, but you didn't mention why there's more spirit qi." "That's right, it's because the fundamental reason for the increase of spirit qi. I haven't found it yet." The girl's self-righteous look made Su Shenxing stagger, and he almost fell from the 19-story building. Emoli, who was startled again, bit Su Shenxing's palm hard. "Ouch. Emoli, don't you know how to fly?" "I'm a little dizzy, I can't fly." Your expression of, I accidentally forgot that I can fly, so I'll just find an excuse to dodge it is too obvious." Su Shenxing's indignant voice echoed in the air. Ahem, Qin Xingyan coughed dryly, which made Su Shenxing turn his attention back to her. "Although I don't have concrete evidence, I have a guess." Emoli conjured a ball of water out of thin air and began to wash Su Shenxing's ears. "I feel like that's not what you mean when you say you're all ears." Su Shenxing ridiculed with an embarrassed expression. Once again ignoring the two who were fooling around, Qin Xingyan continued, "Do you still remember why we met?" Oh, I remember when you were looking for trouble with me and ended up being beaten down by me." The girl's expression became somewhat sinister for a moment. Su Shenxing felt that if he didn't apologize at this time, he might not be able to borrow money from the girl for the rest of his life. Thus he decided to expose his chest. "I was wrong, please continue." At that time, although the goal of the ghost cultivators was only to unseal the great demon from 100 years ago, and they didn't really open the road to the underworld, the girl's ignored skill level increased. But because the demon was sealed at the entrance to the underworld, to a certain extent, the entrance to the two realms of yin and yang was reopened. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid that the place we were at that time was the place where the spirit vein in Jiangjin passed through. The opening of the road to the underworld was like poking a hole in a water pipe, causing the originally intact spirit vein to begin to leak out spiritual energy. That's why the amount of spiritual energy around here increased? Then what should we do now? Su Shenxing pressed down on Emoli's head, who still wanted to cause trouble and asked the girl. I don't know. Things like spirit veins should be under the jurisdiction of the gods. I miscalculated. I actually forgot to ask the earth god about this matter. Qin Xingyan showed a rare expression of regret. Even if we turn back now, that guy is probably not here anymore. Why don't we wait until tomorrow and make a trip to the back mountain? Su Shenxing tried to suggest. No, if the earth god thinks that we can solve the problem, he wouldn't hide this matter from us. In this situation, I'm afraid that we won't get any answers even if we ask. Of course, maybe everything is just my guess. Qin Xingyan bit his lips and suddenly made up his mind. Senpai, I want to go back to the Bailu temple. Isn't this too sudden? Wait, is it my fault for exposing my chest? No, I just want to ask my teachers to see if there's a way to solve the problem. Also, if you can put on some clothes, I'll be very happy. The girl slightly sighed as she spoke. Since you're going back, why don't you bring a letter or something? Su Shenxing touched his trouser pocket and was about to take out the coins again when he was attacked by the girl's speechless gaze. This made him give up on the idea of using the coins as a letter. Then Su Shenxing patted his head. Oh right, there's also this thing. Thus he gave the tooth that he broke out of Cheongqi's mouth to her. Senpai, actually there's no need for a letter. The girl helplessly took the canine tooth. Because Su Shenxing told her that it was just a small monster, she didn't associate this canine tooth with the legendary Cheongqi. Just as she put away the canine tooth, the girl noticed that Su Shenxing seemed a bit absent-minded. Senpai, what's wrong? I think I just saw an aurora over there. Su Shenxing pointed behind the girl. It's just an illusion, right? The girl turned around and was shocked by the dazzling aurora formed by spirit energy. Chapter 23. Woo. The train's whistle suddenly sounded, piercing through the silent night sky. The heavy clanking sound of the old steam engine echoed on the railway, full of rhythm and a special charm. For the older generation of Jiangjin people, this sound had accompanied them for almost half of their childhood. When Jiangjin was first established, the railway was distributed in almost all areas of the city. However, as Jiangjin City developed day by day, the railway became the biggest obstacle to the expansion of the city. Because of an unexpected incident, coupled with the introduction of the more cost-effective and noisy bullet train, the old trains and railways began to gradually be eliminated. Until now, there was only one old train left in Jiangjin, and even this one was something like nostalgia. The carriage was no longer rusty and even the interior was no longer dirty. It looked more like a sightseeing train. What a pity. I heard that the higher-ups have decided to abandon the Jiangyue line. After shoveling the last shovel of coal into the furnace and closing the furnace door, the older coal shoveler wiped his sweat with the towel around his neck and said with a sigh, "This job is about to come to an end. Can't be, right?" The younger coal shoveler sat down on a dark chair, picked up his kettle and drank a mouthful of tea. He said with some disbelief, "Isn't Jiangjin's performance good? Many tourists who come to Jiangjin for the first time like it very much. Also, the older generation also has a special feeling for the steam engine. They won't let the higher-ups do as they please, right? Hey, you don't know, but a foreign company has taken a fancy to the land of Jiangjin Station. They want to invest in building a building in Jiangjin. It's said that they want to build a world-class building. They want money and political achievements, so how can the higher-ups not be moved? Even if there's a mountain in front of them, they'll still think of ways to move it." The older coal shoveler probably had some connections with the higher-ups, as he talked about some secrets. Think about it, Jiangjin has developed for so many years and the city center has long been crowded. The owner of any piece of land is not to be trifled with. Those foreigners want to get a foot in there, so naturally they can only target the station with the least background. If that's the case, the future of the Jiangyue line is really not optimistic. The younger coal shoveler was also moved and his expression was worried. Hee, that's why we don't use it every time. Cherish it well. The older coal shoveler smiled. Okay, it's about time to sound the horn. The Jiangyue's horn sounded again as the two talked and laughed. However, none of them noticed, or rather they couldn't notice the colorful aurora that hung in the sky like a curtain that was gradually opening. Line, I want a girlfriend. In the lecture hall, Monkey kept spinning in front of Su Shenxing's desk, trying to attract his attention. I want to show off my love with my girlfriend in school. I want to enjoy my girlfriend's lap pillow. I want to eat my girlfriend's bento. Even if you say that to me. Su Shenxing looked at him weakly. Although he saw the unsettling beautiful aurora yesterday, he and Qin Xingyan waited until dawn, and the aurora disappeared, but they didn't find anything strange. In the end, they could only conclude that it was one of the supernatural phenomena caused by the increase in the amount of spiritual energy. Thanks to this, Su Xinxing was now a little sleep-deprived. As for Qin Xingyan, he hoped that she wouldn't fall off the flying sword because of fatigue when she was flying to the Bailu temple. Other than you, I can't think of anyone else I can ask for help from. Monkey's face was full of tears and snot. You only used a halfway party to successfully capture Qin Xingyan. Recently, even Goddess Song has been hanging around you. What's even more unforgivable is that you have such a cute sister like Emily. At least give Emily to me. Go die. Su Xinxing said without hesitation. Brother-in-law, please agree, this is my lifetime request. Monkey used the earth seat without any dignity. Go die miserably. Su Xinxing said again without hesitation. How much of a sister complex do you have? Monkey pounced towards Su Xinxing, but Su Xinxing easily avoided the other party's attack by getting up. This caused the other party to collide with the four-eyed class leader behind Su Xinxing. Thanks to this, the expensive iPhone in the class leader's hand also fell to the ground and spun towards Su Xinxing's feet. Su Xinxing sighed, picked up the phone and was about to hand it back to the innocent class leader when his gaze fell on the picture on the phone screen. The four-eyed class leader seemed to be using the phone to check the news. The title of the news was Jiangjin Citizens Jointly Protest the Abandonment of the Jiangyue Line. The picture below was a very standard picture of a protest group holding a small wooden sign and holding a long banner. But this wasn't the problem. The problem was that in the picture there was Monkey's face. On the picture he used oil paint to write "Worship Foreign Things" and "Get Out of Jiangjin" on both sides of his face. He was holding a sign that said "Oppose the Abandonment of the Jiangyue Line" and looked like he was filled with righteous indignation. To be honest, he was a completely different person from his usual wretched self. The class leader stuck his head out and looked at the picture on the phone with a disapproving look. My dad used to be a driver of this kind of train. I grew up on this kind of train. Now that the Jiangyue Line is going to be demolished, I naturally have to stand out and protest. Unfortunately, the protest has no effect. The class leader pushed up his glasses. It was unknown if it was because he felt embarrassed from being knocked down or if he was just refuting. From the Jiangjin Daily, the city government doesn't have any plans to withdraw the order. They even put the development plan on the agenda. Then we'll protest when the time comes. Monkey shrugged indifferently. That's why the higher-ups won't change the plan just because of a few citizens' protests. The class leader's voice gradually became louder. Do you think it's easy to make a plan? And Monkey was surprisingly not overwhelmed by the class leader's imposing manner and argued. But if we don't even try, how do we know it won't have any effect? It's because of your stubborn personality that your project won't make any progress. If this continues, the school will probably take back the budget and the right to use the laboratory. But this has nothing to do with you, class leader. Su Xinxing, who was getting a headache from the argument, dug his ears and then squeezed out of the crowd of onlookers that had gathered. He didn't have classes in the afternoon. Although it was a tempting choice to stay at home, Sakura Apartment's miserable financial situation forced him to start looking for a new part-time job. I hope I can do it longer this time. Chapter 24. His new part-time job was a convenience store clerk. There were two main jobs. One was the cashier and the other was restocking. The former only required him to scan the stripe code and calculate the total amount. The latter was the simple job of arranging the missing goods on the shelves. But no matter what, he only needed to do it when there were customers. Because the convenience store was located in a remote area, there were not many customers, so this part-time job was quite easy. To be honest, it was so easy that Su Xinxing began to worry about whether the convenience store owner could make ends meet. Carrying the basket, Su Xinxing walked around the convenience store again. After making sure that there was nothing to restock, he lazily laid down on the cashier counter. The sound of the siren outside the door from time to time was not noisy. Combined with the fact that it was noon in summer, it made people feel a little sleepy. Should I lower the temperature of the air conditioner? Su Xinxing rubbed his eyes. He was already a little sleepy today and now he was even more sleepy. If he really fell asleep, it would be a little bad. At this time he suddenly noticed a figure loitering outside the convenience store. It was a very cute girl. She had beautiful long straight black hair and was wearing a Gothic-style black uniform. Because Su Xinxing did not control uniforms, he did not know what profession the uniform represented. But from the big cap and the whistle-like hairpin on the back of her head, Su Xinxing felt that the girl's uniform should be related to the railway. Almost as soon as he saw the other party, Su Xinxing was sure that the other party was a monster. This was because she was only about 1.2 meters tall, not even 1 pan in height. Instead of calling her a girl, she was more like a doll. Not only that, but wearing such a thick uniform under the sun in such a hot summer day was something that even the savior and the devil couldn't do. Su Xinxing. Oh no. Without Xingyan a dream, I can't tell whether a monster is harmful or not. Su Xinxing lay on the cashier counter and muttered to himself. Before he met Qin Xingyan, in order to determine whether a supernatural being was harmful or not, he had to secretly observe them for a long time. When he first discovered Qin Xingyan's abnormality, he observed him for nearly half a semester. However, at that time the spiritual energy in Jiangjin had not mutated. The number of anomalies was similar to that in other cities and there were only a few of them. It did not matter even if it took a long time. However, under such circumstances, it was obviously unrealistic to spend so much time to determine whether a freak was harmful or not. Before one freak could be confirmed, another 180 freaks would probably emerge. If it were Mo Li, the little girl would probably not care about anything else after discovering the freak. Unless the freak expressed his obedience, she would *ck him over first. The problem was that Mo Li had said that at most half of his body would be paralyzed. As long as he was careless and used a little too much force, his opponent might be completely destroyed. Even Su Xinxing wouldn't be able to do such a thing with a clear conscience. Therefore, in the end, he could only sigh. While lamenting why he was always working so hard, he pushed open the door and welcomed the rolling summer heat. Although I don't know what you're planning to do, why don't you come in and have a seat? Su Xinxing tried to greet her. Ah, you can see me. The girl was obviously shocked by Su Xinxing's sudden conversation. Her wine-red eyes widened and she looked exceptionally cute. Well, it seemed that this girl belonged to the category of anomalies that ordinary people could not see. These anomalies were usually ghosts or gods and they were more troublesome. In contrast, anomalies with physical bodies like monsters were much more convenient, mainly because they felt more solid when beating them up. Well, something like that. Su Xinxing answered vaguely. That's great. From the station to here no one could see me. I'm about to lose all hope. The girl clasped her hands together and smiled innocently. So you're really related to the railway? Su Xinxing's expression showed that he had expected it. Although it's a little rude, you should know that you're not human, right? Yes. The girl nodded. She did not seem angry or sad because of Su Xinxing's words. She should be the type that was easier to communicate with. I'm a construction-type trunk passenger train, codenamed JS Series. The name of the train is Jiangyu. Oh, you're the old-fashioned train that's still in operation. Su Xinxing showed an expression of sudden enlightenment while trying to search for useful information from the barren knowledge he had learned from Qin Xingyan. You're the so-called, becoming a spirit, right? Well, I keep feeling that something is wrong. If Qin Xingyan was here, he probably could not help but slap Su Xinxing's face with mapo tofu. What the hell is becoming a spirit? After the founding of the People's Republic, no one was allowed to become a spirit, okay? Only those who had opened their spiritual cavities or had become deified were allowed to speak. Forget it, this kind of thing is up to you. Su Xinxing finally gave up trying to explain this phenomenon with his meager knowledge. He pointed at the convenience store behind him in despair. If you don't mind, why don't we go in and have a seat? Thank you very much. The girl bowed to Su Xinxing cautiously. She's very polite. The possibility of her being a harmful anomaly is not high. Su Xinxing evaluated silently in his heart. After entering the convenience store, the girl ran to the air conditioner and squinted her eyes to enjoy the cool breeze blowing from inside. Although it was not comparable to Mo Li's, the air conditioner in the convenience store was actually not bad. You've never had an air conditioner before? Su Xinxing took a bottle of Coke from the freezer. After thinking for a while, he changed it to a bottle of mineral water and handed it to the girl. Thank you. The girl took the bottle of mineral water with an embarrassed smile on her face. Because my design is relatively old, I don't have the luxury to install an air conditioner. To be honest, I've wanted to try it for a long time. I see. Su Shinxing sat back at the cashier counter, took out a coin and stuffed it into the cash register. He then continued, "If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. But in exchange, when you're in the human world, please try not to do strange things that will attract the attention of mortals." "Then what's on that shelf?" The girl pointed at a shelf. "Hair growth agent. Why do you ask?" "Because when I was outside, I saw you standing in front of that shelf for a long time." Sure enough, it was better to silence her. Chapter 25. Su Shinxing wasn't bald. "Listen to me, I'm just worried about my hairline," he explained seriously to the goth loli who was still in a daze. Oh, the girl seemed to understand, but she didn't. She blinked her large wine-red eyes, completely unable to understand why Su Shinxing would have such a reaction. Realizing that the girl was even more innocent than he thought, and that everything he said just now was treated as nothing but noise, the protagonist suddenly felt a little tired. Why do I have to care about this kind of thing? He adjusted his state of mind and decided to deal with it calmly. At this time, the girl seemed to have sorted out her thoughts. "In other words, you're so worried about the hair growth agent to prevent yourself from becoming bald, right? Not good, this guy seems to be naturally evil. In any case, can we first end the topic of baldness?" Su Shinxing rubbed his temples, trying his best to restore his soaring blood pressure to normal. Ever since he learned how to joke and became a joker, he hadn't felt so helpless for a long time. Seeing the girl's confused and innocent expression, Su Shinxing sighed. "Then let's start with the basics. Do you know why you've become like this?" "I don't know." Why did she have to answer with such a happy expression? "Then do you have any money on you? I mean the money used by humans?" "No." The girl continued to happily deny. "I thought so." Su Shinxing sighed again. Then he had a general idea of what to do next. First, he had to determine the reason why she had become like this. Although it was most likely related to the abnormal amount of spiritual energy in Jiangjin, it wasn't as if there weren't other things in Jiangjin that had a longer history than the Jiangyu line. If it was purely because of the spiritual energy, there should have been demons everywhere by now. So there must be other reasons why the clumsy old-fashioned train turned into such a cute girl. Even if it was feminine, it had to follow the basic laws. Now that Xingyan A Meng wasn't here, there was only one person left in Jiangjin who might know the reason. "Jiangyu. Can I call you Jiangyu?" "No problem. Or rather, please call me Jiangyu." The girl's bright eyes were full of smiles as she nodded slightly. "Sorry, can you wait until my working hours are over?" Su Shinxing asked somewhat embarrassedly. If he was absent from work, this leisurely job that he had just found might disappear without a trace. "All right." The girl nodded slightly. Her long and straight black hair fell from her shoulders to her chest, giving her the temperament of a gentle lady from a wealthy family. Then she shrank under the cashier and looked up at Su Shinxing with her wine-red eyes. Jiangyu." "Yes, Mr. Salesperson?" The girl hiding under the table revealed a sweet smile. "No, I just wanted to ask why you were hiding under the table." "Isn't this facility for resting?" Jiangyu showed a surprised expression. Who would rest in the stomach of the table? Su Shinxing subconsciously wanted to ridicule her. But he quickly remembered that the person in front of him wasn't a human, but a train. Could it be that in the eyes of a train, the station and the stomach of the table were the same? Su Shinxing was silent for a few seconds, then asked, "Jiangyu, where did you get your knowledge of human society?" "From the conversations of the passengers." No wonder. The Jiangyu line was a sightseeing route. Although it received many passengers every year, how many people would talk about tea, rice, oil, and salt on the sightseeing train? Therefore, it was normal for this train lady to lack common sense about human life. Su Shinxing, whose question was answered, wasn't happy at all. The more common a person was, the more troublesome it was to take care of them. He deeply understood this point. When Emily first came to this world, he also liked to hide in a corrugated box and called the box that had hundreds of buff spells cast on it Hell Crown. It took Su Shinxing a lot of time and effort to drag that damn otaku demon king out of Hell Crown. I mean the corrugated box. Humans don't hide under the table to rest. If you can sit down obediently, I'll be very grateful. Is that so? Taking this posture to rest. Humans are really incredible. Jiangyu obediently crawled out, then walked to the side and assumed the posture of sitting on an empty chair. At the same time, she sighed in disbelief. No, it's your way of thinking that's incredible. Su Shenxing's face was full of black lines. But because it was troublesome to explain and ordinary people couldn't see Jiang Yu anyway, it wouldn't be a problem even if he put her aside, so Su Shenxing decided not to explain and just let her squat there for the time being. Generally speaking, the physique of supernatural creatures was better than that of humans, so squatting for half a day shouldn't be a problem. In order to save time, Su Shenxing summoned his ghost spirit, and then under Jiang Yu's surprised and curious gaze, told it to go to the land goddess and tell her what happened here. Then the ghost spirit pointed to its mouth. That's right, you guys can't talk. Because the children who refined the ghost spirit would have their tongues cut off when they were alive, the ghost spirit didn't have the ability to speak. Su Shenxing could only tear a piece of paper from the side, write down what happened briefly, then fold it into a paper airplane and give it to the ghost spirit. Thus, the ghost spirit, who still had the personality of a child, held the paper airplane and happily left the convenience store. The other ghost spirits looked at the lucky one enviously. Their expressions made Su Shenxing sigh involuntarily, then he began to fold the airplane for the other ghost spirits. Can I help? Jiang Yu raised her hand and asked cutely with her head tilted. Of course. Su Shenxing handed the notebook to her. Anyway, the paper airplane didn't require much skill. Even Jiang Yu should be able to fold it after looking at it once. After a while, when Su Shenxing was about to finish folding the paper airplane for the other ghost spirits, Jiang Yu cheered in a tone of success. It's done. That's way too slow. Su Shenxing raised his head, but found that the girl wasn't holding a paper airplane in her hand, but a steam locomotive assembled from several pieces of folded paper. How did you achieve such a degree of restoration? A certain protagonist's confidence in crafting was destroyed by a train. Actually, when a passenger was folding it, I secretly took note of it, but I didn't expect that one day I would be able to make something like this with my own hands. The girl smiled sweetly and then without any reluctance she gave the paper train to a ghost spirit that didn't have a paper airplane. Suddenly, all the ghost spirits rushed to the girl's side, which made Su Shenxing, the owner, feel a little lonely. Jiang Yu tore off a few more pieces of paper, and said to Su Shenxing with a smile, Mr. Salesperson, it's actually very simple, let's fold it together. Chapter 26. Just as Su Shenxing was engrossed in folding, someone poked his head. He subconsciously thought it was Jiang Yu, so he slapped the hand away without looking up and said, Stop fooling around, I'm almost done. After saying that, he felt that something was wrong. Although Jiang Yu was rapidly getting closer to him because of the origami, she was still a shy child. Until now, she had not taken the initiative to come into contact with Su Shenxing, nor did she let Su Shenxing come into contact with her. Therefore, he raised his head abruptly and found the convenience store manager, who had returned at some point, looking at him with a faint smile. I couldn't tell. The manager glanced at the various origami products on the cashier counter and the torn notepad. The faint smile on his face became even more pronounced. Little Su, you still have the innocence of a child. Jiang Yu, on the other hand, put her palms together and bowed silently and desperately to Su Shenxing in apology. It seemed that she did not notice when the store manager came, so she was unable to warn Su Shenxing. In the end, Su Shenxing was so embarrassed that he did not even remember how he escaped from the store manager's teasing expression. I'm really sorry. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't notice. It's not your fault. Su Shenxing had a self-deprecating smile on his face. If my well-honed senses were still there, it would be too late. The world or whatever, it's better to just destroy it. This state of collapse continued until the two of them arrived at the abandoned dormitory in the mountains behind Jiangjin. By the way, Su Shenxing had lost his ability to lead the way. He was only able to get here because of the spirits leading the way. What's wrong with this guy? The land goddess who had been waiting in the dormitory put down the 4DS in her hand and looked at Su Shenxing, who had empty eyes and was still muttering things like, that store manager is definitely a demon king. Why can't I sense his presence? My life is already destroyed, and so on. She could not help but ask Jiang Yu curiously. Jiang Yu was about to tell the land goddess what happened, but Su Shenxing, who was next to her, covered her mouth with lightning speed and pulled Jiang Yu into his arms, warning her fiercely, don't say it. Absolutely don't say it. If you say it, I'll let the whole world be buried with my shame. Aren't you making people more curious? The land goddess muttered, but she did not know whether it was out of consideration for the world's safety or because she felt that Su Shenxing's hysteria was too pitiful, so she did not continue asking. Instead she looked at the gothic loli who was in Su Shenxing. This child is not human. As expected, you can see it too. After returning to the serious topic, Su Shenxing became a little more normal, and the hand that was holding Jiang Yu loosened a little. Because if a real human girl is hugged by you like this, she would scream or shout that you're a pervert or something like that, right? By the way, Jiang Yu, who was in Su Shenxing's arms, did not show any emotions of shyness or anger. She just blinked her wine-red eyes and looked a little surprised. You can actually tell from this aspect. Also, I feel like you're scolding me in a roundabout way. As soon as Su Shenxing finished speaking, the land goddess took out a mobile phone from nowhere and took a picture of Su Shenxing. Don't take pictures. By the way, do you have a mobile phone? I just saw a pervert who was molesting a figurine, uploaded the picture. Okay, I won't take pictures. The land goddess Loli said to Su Shenxing, not only did you take a picture, you even uploaded it on the internet. She put the phone back into her t-shirt and said, is it strange to have a mobile phone in this era? Although what she said made sense, Su Shenxing still felt that something was wrong. Since you have a mobile phone, can you at least give me your number? Su Shenxing took out his outdated flip phone. This girl was a bit unpredictable. It was not easy to find her, just like the situation yesterday. If he had her number, it would be very helpful in many situations. I refused. Hey. Is this level of flirting like getting a girl's phone number? You're far from enough. The girl covered her face with one hand and twisted her slim, or rather stick, body into an unimaginable curve. If Emoli was here, he would probably recognize that this was the so-called Jotch pole. But Su Shenxing, who was not very otaku, naturally did not know this. He just unconsciously sighed that this girl was indeed a god. If a normal person twisted like this, they would probably have dislocated. Where's the girl? He looked at the land goddess, who was just a mushroom-headed little girl, and muttered meaningfully. Such a reckless, arrogant and frivolous mortal who dares to blaspheme gods. I will punish you. About 10 seconds later. I'm sorry, I was wrong. The land goddess girl, who was instantly killed, was lying on the ground with wounds all over her body, and admitted her mistake to Su Shenxing. On the side, Jiang Yu clapped her hands. This girl probably thought that Su Shenxing and the others were doing a crosstalk or something. That's about it. Even you can't see what's going on with Jiang Yu? Su Shenxing asked. Did you see the aurora last night? The land goddess suddenly brought up an unrelated topic. I saw it, but there was no change last night. Su Shenxing, who had been watching with Qin Xingyan all night and found nothing, was still full of complaints. Many changes aren't immediate but subtle. This girl is the last old-fashioned train in the city, right? Many of her routes coincide with Jiang Jin's ley lines. It's normal for her to wake up so early. The land goddess girl sighed. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this is not a good thing. What do you mean? Will Jiang Yu's existence bring any negative effects to Jiang Jin? Su Shenxing frowned. Although he had only met the girl for half a day, he already knew that Jiang Yu, who was as pure as a piece of white paper, was not a bad person, although she might be a little two-faced. It was fine if she was a stranger, but if she wanted to make a move on someone she already knew, there would be some resistance. Don't worry, you don't have to do it. The land goddess girl shook her head. The Jiang Yu line will soon be abandoned, and she, who has lost the meaning of her existence, will naturally disappear when the time comes. Thinking of the news he heard from his classmates this morning, Su Shenxing could only remain silent. Chapter 27. This is my home. Su Shenxing brought Jiang Yu to Sakura apartment and introduced it to the curious girl. Although it's not a particularly good place, you can stay here for the time being. Sorry to disturb you. Jiang Yu did not intend to be polite. She pushed open the door of the apartment with a bang, and then began to wander and explore inside like a kitten that had arrived at a new place. Obviously, to a trained human, houses and the things inside were very interesting. Jiang Yu studied the shoehorn on the shoe cabinet at the entrance for a long time with great interest. Since the door was not locked, it meant that Emoli had returned home. Su Shenxing changed into slippers and looked at the girl who was still studying and guessing the function of the shoehorn. He could not help but put his hand on his forehead and sighed. Then he changed her into guest slippers. It was worth mentioning that after being molested by Su Shenxing in the abandoned apartment, After hugging her for a while, Jiang Yu seemed to be less resistant to his touch. She very obediently let Su Shenxing change into the white guest slippers. Su Shenxing found a certain demon king in front of the computer in the room. Ignoring her cries of "at least let me save a file," he dragged her out and threw her on the sofa. Emily lay on the sofa and pretended to cry. He reached for the remote control and turned on the broken TV. Just how much of a shut-in was this guy? "Move aside, I don't have a place to sit." After asking Jiang Yu, who was standing on the side in a daze, to sit on the sofa, Su Shenxing sat next to Emily, who occupied most of the sofa. He squeezed the little girl aside and told Emily what happened earlier. When he finished, Emily's head was already on Su Shenxing's lap. Her eyes were still fixed on the TV and she yawned from time to time. Obviously, she was not interested in what happened to Jiang Yu. Su Shenxing, who had more or less guessed this, did not say anything. Instead, he focused his attention on Jiang Yu. "I'll think of a way to help you. But I advise you not to expect too much." After all, the Earth God had said that Jiang Yu's existence was not a good thing for Jiangjin City. Perhaps the best choice would be for her to disappear along with her body. "I understand." To Su Shenxing's surprise, the girl on the train didn't seem sad at all. She was still smiling faintly. For some reason, Su Shenxing felt that her smile was somewhat bitter. "Actually, I also know that I don't have much time left. As for the abolition of the Jiangyue line, I've already heard about it from my conductor. Do you have any other wishes?" Su Shenxing thought for a while and continued to ask, "If it's a wish that has nothing to do with money, maybe I can help you fulfill it. I want to eat black truffle steak." Emoli immediately raised his hand and interrupted. Su Shenxing tilted his head and dodged the little girl's slap. Then he rubbed her blonde hair with both hands. "I'm doing something serious. Stop fooling around." "Landlord, you're biased. Stingy fellow. Damn virgin. Baldy." Emoli struggled out of his hands and stuck his tongue out at Su Shenxing. "Hey, who's Baldy?" Su Shenxing used his hand to lightly knock Emoli's forehead. "Aren't you going to deny the first few wishes?" Jiang Yu asked curiously. However, Emoli, who had been hit by the hand, was already furious. He was arguing with Su Shenxing, so the latter didn't hear her complaints. After thinking for a while, Jiang Yu raised her voice and said to the two people who were still arguing, "I want to experience the life of a human." The two people stopped arguing. Su Shenxing looked at Jiang Yu with a little surprise on his face. "I like humans the most. Every year I receive a lot of tourists. Seeing them praise the beautiful scenery of Jiangjin during their travels is always the happiest moment for me." Jiang Yu paused for a moment and seemed to be a little depressed. "But I always feel that there must be some difference between the tourists and the people they normally are. That's why I want to experience the life of a human." "No problem." Su Shenxing agreed without hesitation. "But I still have to say something up front. There's not much interesting about the daily life of a human. It might disappoint you. Even so, I still want to see it. Please, Mr. Salesperson." The girl bowed to Su Shenxing again. "Since you've said it to this extent, of course I can't refuse." Su Shenxing scratched his face and said embarrassedly. At this time, Emoli started to hum along with the melody from the TV. "A new harem has appeared. The atmosphere that I worked so hard to create has been ruined by you." Dividing line. In his sleep, Su Shenxing felt a little out of place. The bed seemed to be a lot softer than before. The pillow also felt a lot more fleshy. Not to mention, there was a faint lavender fragrance that filled his nose. When he opened his sleepy eyes, the first thing that came into his sight was Jiang Yu's gentle smile. "Good morning, Mr. Salesperson. Can you explain what's going on?" Su Shenxing sat up from the sofa in the living room and realized that he had slept on the girl's lap as a pillow. "My memory tells me very clearly that I slept in my own room last night. I carried you here." Emoli suddenly popped her head out from behind the sofa. Her hair was combed into two ponytails. Judging from her slightly rusty appearance, it was probably Jiang Yu who combed it for her. At this time, the devil girl was wearing a trench coat. The hem was dragging on the ground. She had a lollipop in her mouth and a serious look on her face. "A day of dating starts with being gently woken up. This is common sense, Sherdao." "Dating my ass. And who is Sherdao?" Su Shenxing's mouth twitched. He didn't know what this girl was up to. "If that's the case, then we can move on to the second step." "I can't pick up the conversation. And what do you want?" Video game center, amusement park, zoo. Sherdao, hurry up and choose. Then let's start our date. So who the hell is Sherdao? By the way, these options have nothing to do with I want to play too. Don't even think about it. Speaking of which, today is not the weekend. You better go to class obediently. Emily suddenly deflated. She lay on the back of the sofa and looked at Su Xinxing with dead fish eyes. Mr. Landlord, it's not fun at all if you don't cooperate. Out of the corner of his eye, Su Xinxing saw that Molly was holding her own phone, and the picture on the screen was the picture of Su Xinxing hugging Jiangyu yesterday. The sender's name was Mushroom. So you're the Earth God's pen pal. Chapter 28. Blue sky, white clouds, and a golden beach. This is the standard of summer. After thinking hard for a long time, Su Xinxing finally decided to take Jiangyu out for a day. Otherwise, would he really have to take her to school? Although Jiangjin City was also a coastal city, it was actually quite far from the sea. Fortunately, Jiangjin City also had a not too small swimming pool, and there was even an artificial beach inside. Of course, the main reason for coming here was that the tickets were cheaper than amusement parks and zoos. But when they arrived at the entrance of the swimming pool, Su Xinxing realized that there was not much difference even if he added the money to buy the swimsuit for Jiangyu. He didn't know why the swimsuit shop at the entrance of the swimming pool would sell dead school swimsuits, and perhaps because it couldn't be sold, the price was unexpectedly cheap. So after thinking for a while, Su Xinxing finally made a difficult decision. Under the gaze of the shop owner who looked at him as if he was a kindred spirit, he gritted his teeth and bought the dead school swimsuit. He could even hear a mother and daughter whispering not far away. Mom, look at that big G. The swimsuit that Uncle bought is the same as the one that Dad bought for you. Chu, lower your voice, let's go, don't look at that person. Well, this little girl's father was a playful person. After checking the tickets, only Su Xinxing's ticket, and entering the swimming pool, the two went into different changing rooms. Jiangyu's clothes seemed to be something that came with her after she transformed into a human, but Su Xinxing also confirmed with her that clothes could be taken off. By the way, can ordinary people see the clothes that Jiangyu takes off? Su Xinxing, who quickly changed into swimming trunks, sat by the swimming pool and waited for Jiangyu to come out. Or rather, is it really okay to wear the dead school swimsuit? In the eyes of ordinary people, won't it become a supernatural scene of the dead school swimsuit floating in the air? Fortunately, Qin Xingyan left enough brainwashing talismans before he left. If it really didn't work, he could just brainwash all the people in the swimming pool. Anyway, today was not a holiday and there were not many people in the swimming pool. Mr. Salesperson? Accompanied by a timid voice, Jiangyu walked over with small steps, somewhat unaccustomed to it. Even if she was still in Su Xinxing's arms, her face was still as usual, but at this moment, there was a little bit of blush. It seemed that even the dead school water that covered a large area still made her feel very shy. But then again, the pure white skin of the girl's arms and thighs contrasted sharply with the indigo blue color of the dead pool water. It even gave one the illusion that the girl was glowing. Even Su Xinxing had the extravagant thought of buying a bikini if he had known earlier. Hey, can you stop staring? I'm a little shy. Jiangyu was probably frightened by Su Xinxing's gaze and became even more bashful. Sorry, I just didn't expect you to be so suitable for Deadpool. After confirming that the people around him still couldn't see Jiangyu, Su Xinxing withdrew his gaze. There's one more thing. Actually, I don't know how to swim. Jiangyu said shyly. It doesn't matter, I don't know how to swim either. Su Xinxing puffed out his chest and said proudly. Is this something to be proud of? Jiangyu saw Su Xinxing's expression and asked somewhat puzzledly. No, it's terrible. Su Xinxing said resolutely. Even Jiangyu, who was as pure as paper, would occasionally have the thought of Mr. Salesperson's head seems to be a little abnormal. In short, today's goal was to learn how to swim by the two landlubbers. They found a place in the shallow pool where there were fewer people, and the two entered the water one after another. Oh, is this the feeling of the swimming pool? It's completely different from yesterday's bath. Jiangyu walked around the pool full of novelty. Chapter 29. He seemed to have gone too far. When Su Xinxing pulled Jiangyu out of the water, the girl was still dizzy. But she soon sobered up and said that it was too exciting and she wanted to play again. Sure enough, even an old-fashioned train had the heart to become a high-speed train. Because Jiang Yu couldn't play alone, Su Shenxing could only follow her. When Jiang Yu, who was addicted to the water slide, was done, the sun was already setting. Really sorry. Jiang Yu and Su Shenxing, who had changed back to their original clothes, walked on the sidewalk. At this time the streetlights were not on yet. Because the high-rise buildings blocked the setting sun, the street was a little dim. The girl stammered to Su Shenxing, who had accompanied her to play the water slide, and climb the stairs dozens of times. I accidentally played too much. It's okay as long as you're happy. Su Shenxing yawned. I haven't been to the swimming pool for a few years. It's not bad to play occasionally. Of course it would be better if she could climb the stairs less. Anyway, thank you for this time. Jiang Yu bowed slightly to Su Shenxing and thanked him with a smile. Meeting you after becoming a human is the luckiest thing for me. Even Su Shenxing, who was thick-skinned, blushed a little at this time. He looked away and found that there was a KFC dessert shop next to them, so he went to buy 2 crispy ice cream cones. Since it's a date, let's go to the end. He handed one of the ice cream cones to Jiang Yu. The girl blushed and didn't take it. Not far away there was a familiar voice. Mom, look at that big G. Uncle, he bought 2 ice cream cones and pretended to have a girlfriend, whose child was so annoying. Su Shenxing and Jiang Yu both ran away. When they came back to their senses, they had already arrived at Jiangjin City's famous scenic spot, Jiangjin Bridge. It was only then that Jiang Yu took the ice cream cone from Su Shenxing's hand. The two looked at each other and smiled. They walked along the riverbank towards the bridge. Although there was no clear destination, the feeling of walking in the dark was not bad. Oh. Not long after finishing the ice cream cone, Jiang Yu suddenly looked at the time on the upper right corner of a large display screen on the road and said softly, I'm going to pass by here. Su Shenxing was stunned at first, but as the heavy clanking of the train came from afar, he understood what Jiang Yu meant. The two of them leaned on the railing and watched the Jiangjin Bridge slowly pass by the Jiangyue Line train. They couldn't help but have a strange feeling. Mr. Salesperson, it doesn't matter how many times I say it. Thank you very much for today. After the train passed, Jiang Yu ran a few steps on the sidewalk and then turned around to face Su Shenxing. Her wine-red eyes were full of seriousness. I've never been so happy. Same to you. Su Shenxing scratched his face embarrassedly. If I came with Mo Li, just looking after her would be enough for me. Not to mention that the devil always wanted to empty Su Shenxing's wallet to buy all kinds of snacks to eat. Actually, I still have a wish that I want to fulfill. Jiang Yu lowered her head and said softly. Then she looked up with a bitter smile on her face. Sorry for being so greedy. But I think that if it's Mr. Salesperson, you can definitely help me. Su Shenxing sighed. Su Shenxing. Huh. The girl looked at him in surprise and made a sound of surprise. I'm not some Mr. Salesperson. Su Shenxing looked at the girl's petite body and slowly said, if you can call my name correctly, I'll consider whether or not to help you. The girl silently stared at Su Shenxing's face. After a while she smiled again, but there were some tears in the corners of her eyes. Mr. Salesperson really knows how to set conditions. Su Shenxing didn't answer and just waited quietly. Jiang Yu took a step forward and reached out her right hand. After hesitating for a moment, she finally put it on Su Shenxing's chest. Then her expression became serious and determined again. Please help me. The girl paused for a moment and then said, Mr. Su Shenxing. Behind the girl, the lights of Jiangjin Bridge suddenly lit up, as if adding a colorful halo to the girl. Dividing line, is Monkey here? The next morning, Su Shenxing rushed to the student dorms of Jiangjin University. Even though he wasn't on the roster, how could a mere wall stop our savior? How could a scholar climb over a wall be called climbing over a wall? After kicking open the door of room 304, Su Shenxing saw Monkey, who was in the middle of generating electricity, standing there in a daze. *CK doing this kind of thing so early in the morning, aren't you afraid of kidney deficiency? Shut up. What do you know about us? Monkey desperately retorted. Even if I'm dead and nailed to a coffin, I'll use my rotten voice to shout explode. After saying that, he tried to rope in help. You're right, brothers. The other 3 people in the dorm immediately pretended not to know him. You traitors. The betrayed Monkey felt like he was about to shed tears of blood. However, Su Xinxing didn't come here today to watch these guys put on a show. Put on your pants, I have something important to talk to you about today. What is it? Monkey threw the squid-smelling tissue into the trash can and quickly put on his pants. Even though he was usually a bit unconventional, it had to be said that college boys who hadn't experienced the hardships of society were still hot-blooded and loyal guys. They also knew that Su Xinxing was a day student. Since he came to the dorms so early in the morning, it must be something important. If you want to borrow money, I think it's better to borrow from the class monitor. F*C monkey F*CK your ancestors. The four-eyed class monitor gave Monkey the middle finger. It seemed like these two had already reconciled. Do I look that poor? Su Xinxing was speechless. Isn't the word poor written all over your face? Monkey looked at Su Xinxing with a "what is this guy talking about" expression. The other people in the dorm had similar expressions. Anyways, I have something else to talk to you about. Su Xinxing awkwardly coughed twice and then said in a serious tone, Monkey, I remember you said your dad drove an old-fashioned train like the Jiangyue line, right? Yeah, what's wrong? Monkey asked, baffled. Then, can you help me ask your dad? Su Xinxing narrowed his eyes and got to the point. Does he know the conductor of the Jiangjin train accident 30 years ago? Chapter 30. Jiangjin was originally the world of old-fashioned trains. Even after the introduction of more cost-effective trains, there was no way to upgrade them on a large scale in a short period of time. But an unexpected incident became an opportunity to upgrade them. That was the huge train accident 30 years ago. The train rushed off the track for unknown reasons. Including the front, more than 7 carriages overturned. The death toll reached as many as 36 people. The surviving passengers were all injured. The whole incident shocked the whole country. But Su Xinxing, who was less than 20 years old, didn't have much of an impression of this incident. After all, it happened more than 10 years ago. Why are you looking for the conductor? Monkey didn't rush to answer Su Xinxing. Instead he asked curiously. Probably because they felt that Su Xinxing's words might involve some privacy. Other than Monkey, the other 3 people in the dormitory found an excuse to leave the dormitory. I have something to talk to him about. Su Xinxing omitted the subject and answered very honestly. Anyway, he didn't say that he wanted to talk to him. Then I advise you to give up on this idea. Monkey hesitated for a while, then finally clenched his teeth and said, What's wrong? Su Xinxing felt that something was wrong. Could it be that he's already dead? After all, 30 years had passed. The conductor, who was still young at that time, should be old now. It wouldn't be surprising if he died. But in this way, Jiang Yu's wish couldn't be fulfilled. Because of this, Su Xinxing frowned. He didn't know the way to the netherworld. He's not dead yet. Monkey said with a complicated expression. It's just that he's become a bit surly. It won't be that easy to talk to him. You know that person? Hearing Monkey say this, Su Xinxing's curiosity became even more vigorous. Nonsense. Monkey sneered with his nose. The conductor of the accident 30 years ago was my dad. Dividing line. While Su Xinxing was asking for information from Monkey, Jiang Yu, who was anxiously waiting for the final result in Sakura's apartment, also met a special guest. You must be the Earth God. After opening the door and seeing the guest outside, Jiang Yu showed a surprised expression. However, for some reason the Earth God of Jiangjin now had a funny bump on his head. Hey, what's wrong with this house? I can't even get in through the ground. She clutched her head, dissatisfaction written all over her face. Can't you just come in through the door? I'm not a delivery man. As an Earth God, it's too degrading to walk through the door. The values of the Earth God were truly incomprehensible. Then Lord Earth God, what brings you here this time? After welcoming her into the house, Jiang Yu made her a cup of water and said apologetically, Sorry, we don't have any tea leaves at home. It would be better to say that there were cobwebs in the canister used to store the tea leaves. How long had it been since something was spilled? If you are looking for Mr. Su Xinxing, he is in school now. If I wanted to find him, I wouldn't have come at this time. The Earth God curled his lips. I'm here for you. Question mark. A question mark appeared on Jiang Yu's head. The accident 30 years ago, you should also know about it, right? The Earth God sat on the sofa and looked at Jiang Yu. When the latter heard her mention this matter, her face darkened and even her body stiffened a little. The earliest train in Jiangjin Zhonghua ship is your predecessor. Yes, although the memory at that time is not clear, the accident did have something to do with me. After a moment, Jiang Yu nodded and admitted her responsibility. At that time, Jianghua ship suddenly opened its spiritual cavities and had self-awareness. Then, as a newborn monster, it couldn't immediately control its own power. Finally, the accident happened. The earth god lowly drank a mouthful of water, but immediately spat out her tongue because of the scalding water. However, it also suffered the consequences of its own actions. Not only was its consciousness greatly damaged, it was also abandoned. It directly lost the concept of a monster's existence. In a sense, it can be said that its soul has been destroyed. After that, the old trains in Jiangjin were gradually abandoned. Later, due to the pressure of the old residents, the government planned to get an old train as a tourist train to satisfy their feelings. It's just that at that time almost all the trains that could still run were old. After looking around, only Jianghua ship, which was left in a broken factory, was still passable. So they renovated Jianghua ship, renamed it Jiangyu, and let it run on the railway as a tourist train. After that, the earth god lowly looked at Jiangyu with a complicated expression. Your consciousness was born in the past 10 years. Since that's the case, it has nothing to do with Jianghua. You don't need to take responsibility for it. But at least, Jiangyu obviously wanted to say something, but in the end she didn't say anything. She just bit her lower lip and seemed to disagree with the earth god lowly's words. Don't misunderstand, I'm not here to comfort you. If the earth god lowly's expression was a little lazy before, then now it was purely serious. Do you know what will happen to Jiangyu without you? Without waiting for Jiangyu to answer, she continued. As the true spirit of the train, after losing you, Jiangyu will be an empty shell. Although it can still run now, it will be in danger of disintegration at any time. Not only that, without the protection of the true spirit, the train itself is more prone to various accidents. In fact, just now there was already a conductor who fell off the train because the train wheels suddenly jammed. Is he okay? Jiangyu hurriedly asked with concern. I picked him up. It's just a minor injury, but I don't know about the next time. The earth god lowly shook her head. Whether it's me or the one who lives here, we don't have the time to help you look after your carriage all day. If this continues, I'm afraid that before Jiangyu line is abandoned, the train will repeat the accident 30 years ago. Then what should I do? Jiangyu hurriedly asked. Go back to Jiangyu line. The earth god lowly stared at Jiangyu and said word by word. But because there's a problem with Jiangjin's spirit vein now, if you go on the Jiangyu line that runs along the spirit vein, you might not be able to leave the carriage. Once Jiangyu line is abandoned, you will also disappear immediately. When you left the train, you should have vaguely felt this point. The earth god lowly put the almost untouched teacup back on the table. Do you want to stay in the human world or return to Jiangyu line? Think about it yourself. After saying that, she jumped towards the floor. In the end, her little face hit the floor with a thud. Ouch, I forgot that there's no way to escape through the earth here. Chapter 31. After Su Xinxing asked for the current address of the monkey's father, he asked the monkey to help him apply for leave, and then quickly left Jiangjin University. Then on the way he met the earth god girl with a swollen head and a band-aid on her nose. What? Su Xinxing looked at the mushroom-headed lowly in front of him and said vigilantly, I don't have any money on me right now. Why do I think of borrowing money when I see people? The earth god girl's eyes twitched and then she said, I'm just here to inform you that your train girl has returned to the Jiangyue line. Su Xinxing was stunned, but I haven't found the person she wants to see yet. The earth god girl sighed and told Su Xinxing what happened before. Although she looked a little guilty, there was no trace of regret on her face. But I didn't expect her to be so decisive. I expected her to think about returning to the train tomorrow. Su Xinxing suddenly became silent. From his clenched fists, it could be seen that this savior was not in a good mood. But at this moment the fists that could kill gods and Buddhas didn't even have a target to punch. Was he going to blame the investment company? But if the Jiangyue line didn't stop, not only would it accelerate the deterioration of Jiangjin's spirit veins, but even Jiangyue itself might become a strange thing because of the spirit energy contamination. Should he stop Jiangyue from returning to the train? But in this way the Jiangyue line would become a safety hazard. But once it was abandoned, it would still affect Jiang Yue and cause Jiang Yue to disappear. After a long silence, Su Xinxing started to run again. Hey, where are you going? The Earth God girl waved and shouted behind him. To do what needs to be done. Dividing line. Wu Xingbang was once Jiang Jin's leading conductor. The first train in Jiangjin Jianghua was the place where he fought until now. Until the accident happened. He seemed to be the luckiest person in the whole accident, but he might also be the most unlucky. At that time, everyone's attention was on him. Many people also slandered him, thinking that he was the main culprit for the accident. Just like that, he was removed from his position as a train conductor because of disciplinary action and became a small employee of the local railway department again. He had been in the system for more than 20 years, and not only did he not make any progress, but he was also removed from the railway department. After being laid off, he became even more depressed. Every day he spent money to get drunk. He would often get drunk and beat his wife and children. Everyone looked down on him. Even he himself gave up on looking for a job. He stayed at home all day, relying on his wife's financial support and occasional odd jobs to maintain his decadent life. It was no wonder that monkey had such a disgusted look when he talked about his father. But today Wu Xingbang's peaceful and decadent life was broken. An exceptionally young passerby kicked open the door of his house, and without saying a word, grabbed him by the collar and ran out. In a daze he would naturally try to resist. However, it was useless. Obviously, the young man was not as tall as him nor as strong as him, but he felt like he was being held in the mouth of a giant beast. There was no possibility of breaking free. Just when Wu Xingbang was wondering when he provoked such a fiend, he found that the other party was taking him to the city's sightseeing railway. Could it be that I owe this person a lot of money, so he wants to use the train to crush me to death? That's too vicious. So Wu Xingbang continued to struggle. Then he was knocked to the ground by the young passerby. Could this be the legendary One Yang Finger? After perceiving the insurmountable strength gap between the two, Wu Xingbang finally calmed down. But the young man discontentedly clicked his tongue and muttered, "The train has already started." Then he pulled Wu Xingbang again and ran along the railway. Although it was a bit ridiculous, Wu Xingbang felt that the person who pulled him was even faster than the train. Because not long after he saw the sightseeing train getting closer and closer. At this time the other party did not continue to run next to the railway, but jumped quickly on the top of the building on the right side of the railway. This was the old town and the houses were generally only 2 or 3 stories. Even so, Wu Xingbang was still scared. After fainting from fright, waking up from fright and fainting from fright, he felt that the acid in his stomach was about to flow back. Finally, the young man who was dragging him like a handbag finally stopped. It was not until this time that Wu Xingbang found that they had passed the train, and the sightseeing train was whistling. Then the young passerby's face made a leap of faith from the 3rd floor. Seeing the train colliding head-on, Wu Xingbang could do nothing but scream at the top of his lungs. In the end he landed safely. Although Wu Xingbang fell on the roof of the train, he didn't know if it was an illusion or something else, but he seemed to hear the young man softly say, "Fortunately, I did not disappoint you." Then something incredible happened. Countless white light spots gathered together, and then formed a somewhat illusory human figure on the roof of the train. It was the person Wu Xingbang had been dreaming of for 30 years. He trembled as he looked at the figure and said incoherently, "I have always wanted to see you again." At this moment the wind on the roof seemed to be blocked and even the movement of the train could not be felt. Wu Xingbang's eyes were only left with the person in front of him. "I'm sorry I let you suffer so much. It was my fault." The illusory human figure showed an apologetic expression. "No, I know you saved me. I should have died there. You saved me," Wu Xingbang hurriedly said. "For 30 years I have wronged you." The illusory girl touched his balding hair, but the hand made of light had no physical feeling at all. "I've always owed you an apology and now this wish has finally come true." But Wu Xingbang was so emotional that he cried as if he wanted to vent all the pain of the past 30 years. "Even so, I still hope that you can treat your life well. After all, it was once me, one of the few pieces of evidence left in this world by Jianghua ship." Just like this, the girl named Jiang Yu comforted the crying middle-aged man like comforting a child. "No matter how many laps I have run on the track, I will never get tired of the surrounding scenery. Because every day there will always be a different place from yesterday, Every day there will always be a different person from yesterday. Every day there will always be a different beauty from yesterday. She revealed a beautiful smile that could make anyone's heart beat faster. This kind of world, I really like it. Division line, the Jiangyu line was abandoned in the end. But the government did not let the foreign company occupy the former Jiangyu station. Instead they built a museum there which displayed every detail of Jiangjin City from its founding to its prosperity. On the weekend outside the Jiangjin Museum, a mobile wonton stall was selling cheap wontons to tourists. Not good, Dad, the city management is here. A skinny, even somewhat wretched-looking young man alerted the balding middle-aged stall owner. Therefore, while the diners who were holding small plastic bowls were dumbfounded, the middle-aged boss completed the transformation of the wonton stall into a tricycle and then drove away with his son. However, when he was about to leave, the wonton stall owner felt that he seemed to have seen a strangely familiar face among the tourists. Achoo. Su Shinxing sneezed, startling Song Yu, who was next to him. Caught a cold? The girl took out a tissue and handed it to Su Shinxing, at the same time asked with concern. No, probably someone was talking about me. Su Shinxing wiped his nose and answered in a muffled voice. Outside the Jiangjin Museum, there was an exquisite old locomotive as a signboard. A few children ignored the calls of their parents and were happily playing inside. Su Shinxing vaguely saw a girl who was less than 1.2 meters tall, dressed in a black uniform sitting on the seat of the train. She looked at the children with a smile, then she turned around and waved at him. What's wrong? Song Yu's voice brought Su Shinxing back to reality. The figure in the train also disappeared as if it had never existed. Nothing. Su Shinxing took a breath and smiled. I just feel that this world is not bad. Speaking of which, I heard from Mo Lee that you went on a date with a woman you didn't know. Then Mr. Playboy Radish, when do you plan on introducing that person to me? The world or whatever, it's better to just destroy it. Chapter 32. This is your new classmate Cui Yingying, who used to study in Shangjing. Let's welcome her. The sparse applause showed the lack of prestige of the bald teacher on the podium, who was over 50 years old. However, he didn't plan on introducing her seriously, he just wanted to go through the motions, so he didn't say much. As the person being introduced, Cui Yingying felt extremely awkward under the gazes of the crowd. Because of her father's work, their family moved to Jiangjin. This meant that Cui Yingying had to give up on her classmates and friends and start from scratch. Unfortunately, she wasn't good at this kind of thing. Cui Yingying, how's your eyesight? The bald teacher asked Cui Yingying, who was feeling sorry for herself. The little girl was taken aback, but she immediately reacted and nodded. That's good. You can sit behind Mo Lee Su, there's an empty seat there. Looking towards the direction indicated by the bald teacher, the first thing Cui Yingying saw was a head of dazzling blonde hair. It was completely different from the color of dyed hair, it was full of vitality and luster. Then, a delicate face filled with laziness and boredom, and a short figure lying on the table came into her sight. Could it be a child who returned from abroad? Cui Yingying curiously looked at the little girl who was openly slacking off. I heard that Shangjing's teaching progress is faster than here. Cui Yingying, your entrance exam results are also very good. If you have the chance, teach Mo Lee Su well, understand? Cui Yingying hesitated for a moment. She felt as if she saw the other students around Su Mo Lee following the teacher's words, showing a grateful expression of, oh my God, I'm finally liberated. However, the middle-aged teacher didn't give her a chance to regret. He only asked her to quickly sit in the back row and then started the lesson. To be honest, the homework here was indeed lighter than in Shangjing. The teacher's teaching was also easy to understand, but the occasional Jiangjin dialect would make Cui Yingying feel a little troubled. The other problem was the girl sitting in front of her. For 3 consecutive periods she was lying there and sleeping without moving. Was this really okay? Why didn't the teachers or the students seem to be surprised? It wasn't until the 4th period neared noon that she yawned and stretched as if no one else was around. Lunchtime. Jiangjin City's No. 2 high school was a private school, so the cafeteria's food model was closer to that of a university. Of course, the degree of freedom was not as great as that of a university. There were only a few set meals that were about the same price, and the students had to line up at the open window to get their food. Since school had started for quite some time, in fact it was almost summer vacation, The students had already formed their own small circles. As a complete outsider, it was not easy to integrate into them. If Cui Yingying was a boy, maybe they could play basketball, volleyball, or fight together. She could also naturally join the boys' circle. Unfortunately, girls were much more delicate and sensitive than boys. Therefore, she could only find a seat by herself for lunch. Not long after, she found a table with only one person in the crowded cafeteria. Moreover, that person was the blonde girl with double ponytails that his teacher had told him to get along well with. As for her name, she seemed to be called Su Emoli. Although she was a little curious why no one else was sitting here, the little girl, who was only in her second year of junior high school, didn't think too much about it. She ran to Su Emoli with her lunch. "Classmate, is there anyone else sitting here?" Cui Yingying did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the entire canteen seemed to have quieted down in an instant. Everyone around her looked at her with pity. As a transfer student, she naturally did not know about the glorious deeds of this girl named Su Emoli in Jiangjin City's No. 2 high school. Because of her doll-like sweet appearance, even though Emoli was almost expressionless and always had a cold appearance, there were still many boys who secretly liked her. Until a certain third-year rich kid took a fancy to Emoli and asked Emoli to be his girlfriend. Then that idiot was beaten up by Su Emoli to the point that even his mother could not recognize him. After a week of peace, the second generation found more than 30 little punks to block the door, wanting to take revenge. Even the guards and security guards of the city's second high school did not dare to step forward. Su Emoli, in front of almost the whole school, beat all the 30 little punks with steel sticks and butterfly knives to the ground, and on average each of them broke more than 2 bones. That rich kid who was finally discharged from the hospital was once again hospitalized with even more serious injuries. When the school saw that such a big incident had happened, they immediately decided to suspend Emoli from school to appease the other party. With just a phone call from Emoli, her guardian came to the school. After talking to the school's leaders, including the principal, they decided to withdraw the punishment and allow Emoli to continue attending school. Although the parents of that rich kid knew that their son was ignorant and incompetent, how could they, who were in a high position, suffer such a loss? For people who cared about their reputation, this was worse than having them eat sh*t. Just when they planned to make trouble at school and find someone to deal with Su Emoli's guardian named Su Shenxing, the people of the Discipline Inspection Committee directly came to the two of them with the materials. Until now, the two were still living in the same prison. In addition to making a certain arrogant and despotic second generation fall from heaven to hell, and can only be a man with his tail between his legs, this incident also made everyone in the city's second middle school understand that Su Emoli is not just a harmless doll like her appearance. To put it more simply and intuitively, the scene of Su Emoli beating up more than 30 punks alone at that time was enough for the children who witnessed it to have nightmares for a long time. It was not like Big Brother Jack Han's wonderful martial arts that could play with the chair, but a unilateral ravaging and killing. There was nothing left except screams, wails, begging for mercy and fear. From then on, everyone automatically distanced themselves from Emoli. Even when eating, they would subconsciously keep a distance from her. Well, when eating, Emoli was like an animal protecting its food. It was true that she had more destructive power than usual. But today this almost unspoken rule was broken by Cui Yingying, the transfer student. For a moment, almost everyone began to worry about this reckless transfer student. They saw Emoli raise her head. Her eyes flashed with displeasure, but then she seemed to have thought of something. She suppressed her displeasure and nodded sullenly. Thus, the hungry Cui Yingying did not think too much and found a seat to sit down and began to eat her set meal. Seeing that the two people did not talk and only lowered their heads to eat, the atmosphere in the cafeteria became a bit strange. Chapter 33. This can't go on. Su Shenxing looked at Emoli and said, "Humans are social creatures. If you're always alone, there will be problems." Landlord. Emoli moved his eyes from the TV to Su Shenxing's face and said expressionlessly, "Have you finally decided to find a girlfriend?" "Of course not." Su Shenxing said bitterly, "I'm talking about you. Do you have any other friends other than me?" "Hey, I'm actually friends with the landlord. Why do you look so surprised? My heart hurts so much." Su Shenxing's heart was attacked. "Hey, the landlord is actually a virgin. It's about time you had enough of this joke. Hey, the landlord is actually bald. Of course not. Su Shenxing came back to his senses and found that he was being teased by his pet. That's why I want you to make some friends. I have friends. Jasmine succinctly took out her phone. A communication app was displayed on the screen, and the contact list was filled with people's names. They're just online friends, cooperate with Mushroom Earth God, and video call them with women made of mud. They'll give me money. Stop it. Don't continue to deceive the pure hearts of otakus. These people were so pitiful. They liked a pile of mud and were cheated of their feelings, but they were also cheated of their money. Speaking of which, it was no wonder that Earth God Loli didn't hesitate to spend money. It turned out that this could be considered as an evil god's behavior. In short, you're too antisocial. Although I don't want you to become like AI Xiaolu who saved the school, at least make me a friend. He said righteously, just think of it as being cheated by me. Maybe you'll find out the benefits of having friends. So the next day, Emily brought back Songyu who didn't know the truth. Go to your school and look for her. Oh, if you succeed, I'll line up for you to buy the limited edition strawberry cake from the cake shop at the station. Oh. The memory ends. Emily raised his head and looked at Cui Yingying who was happily eating the set meal. He thought for a moment, then knocked on the table with his chopsticks to attract her attention. A commotion broke out among the surrounding students. Voices such as, "Look, they're really going to attack that new student who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. That girl is so pitiful. Should we report this to the teacher? Give up, even the teacher is not that person's opponent. Huff huff, this junior high student is really too good. That chef over there, I've already called the police," and so on. However, they were all controlled to the extent that they would not be heard by the two people over there. Although it was useless against Emily who had very sharp senses. However, Emily was too lazy to care about them. What happened? Cui Yingying, who was completely unaware of the situation, raised her head to look at the displeased Emily and asked carefully. "We've had dinner together, so we're friends." Emily still had a straight face and said very stiffly, "As proof of our friendship, you can have these." As he spoke, he placed all the carrots, coriander and green peppers on his plate onto Cui Yingying's plate. "You're the one who doesn't want to eat these." Cui Yingying looked at the mountain of vegetables that suddenly appeared on her plate with an embarrassed expression, not knowing what to do. "In exchange, I'll accept this." After saying that, Emily took the largest piece of barbecued pork from her plate. "I purposely saved it for last." Cui Yingying looked like she had suffered a huge blow. In the end, she could only eat the pile of vegetables that she did not like very much. The surrounding students who saw this scene almost sympathized with upstream flow into a river. But the girl's ordeal was not over. Or rather, it was just the beginning. Cui Yunyun. During lunch break, Molly suddenly appeared in front of Cui Yingying. "As a friend, I won't hold back on your homework." Then, without caring about Cui Yingying's wishes, she quickly copied Cui Yingying's homework. Oh wait, I'm not done yet, at least wait until I finish. She can't even remember my name. Doesn't she know how to blush when she says something like that? Cui Yingying thought to herself. Molly still did not return her homework until the beginning of the first afternoon class. During recess. "Cui, what's your name? My eraser is missing. As a friend, let me borrow your eraser. This isn't a conversation between friends at all, right? Wait a minute. That giraffe eraser is for collection. If you want to borrow it, take this plain white eraser." By the time the giraffe returned, its head was nowhere to be seen. At night after school. "Cui, as a friend, I'll have to trouble you to clean it up. This time you didn't even get a single word right. I'll treat you to green peppers next time." "I don't want to eat that." In a sense, Cui Yingying, who was bullied in school, wanted to cry but had no tears. "Mom, I want to go back to Shangjing. District separation line. Mr. Landlord, you're right." After returning to Sakura's apartment, Mo Lee, who was eating strawberry cake as dessert, had a rare look of satisfaction on his face. "Friends are very useful." "Is that so? I keep feeling like something's wrong." Su Shenxing, who was washing dishes, suspiciously looked back at Mo Lee, who was sitting on the sofa eating cake while watching TV. "Did you really make friends?" "Of course." The Devil King patted his chest that barely moved up and down as he promised. However, Su Shenxing's doubts did not disappear. He also knew about Mo Lee's past in school. It shouldn't be that easy for the little guy to make friends in just one day. He just wanted to use this matter to train the girl's social skills. He didn't even have any expectations for Emily to make friends. Even the original purpose of the strawberry cake was to comfort the little guy when he was disappointed because he didn't make friends. However, he didn't expect that he actually made friends smoothly. Thinking of this, he put down the last plate in his hand, untied his apron, and handed it to the ghost spirits waiting on the side to put away the tableware. Then he continued to say, "Then tomorrow invite your friend to our house to play. I also want to see what kind of person your friend is." "No problem." Emily continued to answer quickly. "You decided without asking your friend's opinion?" Su Shinxing looked at Emily's unhesitant answer, and the bad premonition in his heart became more and more serious. Maybe Emily misunderstood something. "My friend is a good person," the girl who didn't cause any trouble to others said with a proud face. Chapter 34. The famous tycoon in the business world sat in his Kian proudly and asked the driver to drive him to the airport. He was ready to fly abroad to discuss the next step of business with his business partners. He was in a very good mood after defeating his opponent in the bidding. Although he didn't know where that rookie small business came from, the other party's recent arrogant expansion had already stepped on the bottom line of many veterans in the business world. If it weren't for the fact that the tycoons like him had some public or private problems during this period, someone would have jumped out to deal with the other party. The tycoon was calculating how much profit he could make this time, but he didn't realize that his loyal driver had already fainted while foaming at the mouth. However, his hands were still on the steering wheel. Not only that, the car's speed was further increased. By the time the tycoon heard something wrong from the roar of the motor, the Kian had already ignored the red light at the intersection and crashed into a tanker truck coming from the other side. With a loud bang, the two cars were suddenly engulfed in flames that rose several meters high. The street was suddenly in a mess because of the explosion. In a corner where no one was paying attention, a dilapidated Peugeot drove away from the scene of the riot and slowly headed toward the city center. A thin man was sitting in the car. He was wearing a gray robe that was somewhat out of place in this era. He had a swept-back hairstyle and a strange smile on his face. There was no one in the passenger seat of the Peugeot, but there was a small jar that was emitting some hair-raising rustling sounds. After connecting the car to the Bluetooth touchscreen and dialing an unmarked phone number, a familiar voice sounded in the car. "How's it going? If you turn on the TV now, you might be able to see the news. You don't have to worry about that old thing anymore." The other side was silent for a moment. It was unknown if the person was watching the news on the TV. After a while he spoke again, but there was some surprise in his voice. "You killed that old thing? Once and for all." The man sneered. "Aren't you afraid of attracting attention?" I've checked. The only permanent cultivator in this city is a little girl from the Bailu Temple. Moreover, that little girl has recently returned to the Bailu Temple. Even if I cause a ruckus, no one will be able to find me as long as I withdraw in time, let alone killing a mere mortal." The man boasted proudly. After falling into silence once more, the other party clearly knew that the person he had found wasn't reliable. However, it was already rare for him to meet these supernatural beings, so there was no room for him to be picky. "Anyway, don't forget to transfer the 500,000. I think you know the consequences of breaking the contract, right?" The man pulled out his hand and flicked the clay pot on the passenger seat. The rustling sound inside suddenly became louder, and they could even vaguely hear some strange chirping. "My babies aren't full yet." Then, as he wished, he heard a sharp intake of breath from the other side. "You don't have to worry about that. A mere 500,000 yuan is nothing to me." After hesitating for a moment, the voice seemed to have made up its mind and said, "There is one last thing that I hope you can help me with. If you succeed this time, I will give you 1 million. Tell me what it is first." The man's eyes flashed, but he didn't immediately agree. He asked. "There is a doctor with the surname Cui from our rival technology company. Recently he went to Jiangjin to set up a branch company. He has almost all of the company's confidential information in his hands. I want you to make him spit out all of it." Towards the end, the voice had become somewhat vicious. It seemed that the other party had suffered quite a bit at the hands of that doctor with the surname Cui. "This is not easy to do. The man deliberately dragged out his tone. If it was just causing trouble or killing someone, it wouldn't be difficult for me. However, interrogation are not my strong points. The other party was silent for a while. That doctor has a daughter. She has just transferred to Jiangjin's second high school. Oh, 1,500,000. Can you give me a definite answer? All right. You just wait for the good news. The man laughed and hung up the phone. He stepped on the accelerator and sped away. 1,500,000 was enough for him to spend for quite a while. Moreover, Jiangjin didn't have any righteous people, so he didn't have to worry about being attacked. It was just kidnapping a little girl, so it wasn't difficult at all. However, he didn't notice that a delivery youth riding a little sheep, wearing a helmet with the words Shaw County Snacks on it, stopped his car and looked suspiciously at the shabby Peugeot that was disappearing around the corner. Dividing line. Because of yesterday's tragic experience, Cui Yingying unexpectedly gained the sympathy of her classmates and was finally accepted by the rest of the class. However, our transfer student girl wasn't happy at all. How should I put it? Everyone's attitude was too gentle. They looked at her as if they were looking at a terminally ill patient. While you can still move, play a little more. You won't be able to play in the future. While you still have an appetite, eat a little more. You won't be able to eat in the future. Wasn't this too exaggerated? Although Emily Sue did go a little overboard, it was still at the level of a prank. Even if it was more serious, it was at most school bullying. Why did he look at her with such gentle eyes? Wouldn't this make her even more miserable? %*% yen hashtag and. Emily Sue looked for Cui Yingying just like yesterday. Beyond human pronunciation? After subconsciously complaining, Cui Yingying found that she could actually understand that he was calling her. She suddenly felt a subtle sense of self-loathing. Was she a masochist? Why would she care more about him after being bullied? Today, come to my house to play. Emily Sue sent Cui Yingying a concise invitation. Cui Yingying suddenly heard the surrounding students whispering. Is it too late? The transfer student is finally going to become his sacrifice. Damn it, she's such a kind-hearted girl. She's so pitiful. It's okay, some people die, but she still lives in our hearts. Even Cui Yingying felt a little helpless. Emily Sue wasn't some big devil. Why did he have to make the atmosphere so sad? Moreover, she didn't have time to go to his house tonight. Sorry, I have something to do tonight. She tactfully refused. So I might not be able to make it. Instantly, Emily Sue Cheng's expression said, how could this be? Wasn't this too shocking? Didn't he consider the possibility of me rejecting him? Cui Yingying didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, Emily Sue Cheng didn't force her. He just turned around dejectedly. Instantly, the whispers around them became even louder. What, the transfer student actually defeated Emily Sue? Could she be the legendary hero? Hero Highness actually exists. Cui Yingying is our king. Cui Yingying's head was filled with black lines. That's enough. Chapter 35. In fact, after 2 days of getting along, Cui Yingying felt that she had some understanding of Emily to a certain extent. Although she didn't know the reason, it was obvious that the other people at school were distancing themselves from Emily. Even before she came to school, Emily didn't have anyone to talk to. That's why when she first met him, he was so bored that he fell asleep on the table. It was also a kind of escape from reality. After that, because the teacher mentioned him by name, he gave her a bridge to talk to him. Plus, she didn't explicitly reject him, so Emily was so clingy to her. Thinking about it this way, Emily was just a little guy who became a little eccentric after being alone for a long time. Emily was half a head shorter than his peers. Brilliant reasoning, but it was completely wrong. If Su Xinxing could hear the girl's thoughts, he would definitely ridicule him like this. Even so, Cui Yingying turned around and the person following her immediately hid behind a telephone pole on the side of the road. I don't think stalkers are good. I'm just walking behind my friend. I keep a certain distance. This kind of behavior is commonly known as stalking in society. Cui Yingying sighed. Aren't you going home? I've had enough Shasian snacks. Emily said righteously. Shasian snacks? Cui Yingying tilted her head, unable to understand what Emily meant. But he was probably complaining about her dinner. If you don't mind, do you want to eat at my house? Cui Yingying came from a single-parent family. Her mother died in an accident, and her father didn't have any intention of remarrying, so he raised Cui Yingying alone. Although most of the time her father was either at the company or in the laboratory, he would take time out from time to time to accompany Cui Yingying. Today was such an exception. So Cui Yingying hurriedly went home to buy groceries to cook for her father. Yes, Dad likes to eat shredded pork with garlic sauce. But considering the nutritional balance, in the fresh food section of the supermarket, Cui Yingying, who was carrying a plastic basket, was carefully choosing the ingredients for dinner like a housewife. At this moment, Emily tugged at her sleeve. The girl turned around and saw that the other party was holding a large green pepper. We agreed that I'll treat you. I don't want to eat. After shopping, Cui Yingying took Emily home. By the way, most of the things they bought were carried by Emily, which made Cui Yingying realize that girls were surprisingly powerful. Is there anything you don't like? Cui Yingying put on a cute apron with a cat face and asked Emily if there was anything he couldn't eat. Goblin. So it doesn't matter, right? Okay, I'll put a lot of carrots, coriander and green peppers on your portion later. Emily frowned. The world was on the brink of destruction. Don't make that expression. I'm just kidding, I'll give you more meat dishes. The world was saved. I'm going to cook. The girl, who was completely unaware of what kind of great feat she had accomplished, walked into the kitchen. Then she revealed half of her face and said to Molly, "Go and call your parents. Otherwise they will be worried." Emily took out his phone and called the Earth God. "Help me ask the landlord for a leave of absence." "Why do you want me to?" Before the other party could finish, Emily quickly hung up the phone and skillfully removed the battery. After doing all this, Emily wandered around Cui Yingying's house. Cui Yingying lived on the 6th floor of a high-end apartment, but the decorations of the house were obviously done according to a model. Although the materials used were not bad, it was too rigid and didn't have a delicate taste. After wandering into Cui Yingying's room, this feeling was relieved. Obviously, the girl's room had been carefully cleaned by her. The overall color of the room was pink, and there was a string of beautiful small wind chimes by the window. In addition to the textbooks on the desk, there was also a cartoon lamp full of childlike interest. A cute doll that showed off a girl's charm was placed on the bookshelf. On the princess-like bed there was a large teddy bear. All of this made Emily's young girl heart feel attacked. So she began to follow Su Xinxing's instructions and looked for the pornographic books. At this time, a man in a gray robe suddenly appeared at the window, one hand raised high, holding a spider web like Spider-Man. He smiled and stared at Emily, his gray robe fluttering in the wind, looking very pretentious. "You're the daughter of that Cui." Jasmine didn't pay any attention to him as her brain started to work furiously. "Come in through the window, don't go through the front door, not a good person talk after flipping thus." While the man was still leaning against the window waiting for Jasmine to react, the little Lord Devil King had already rushed in front of the man with a speed that normal people would not be able to react to. His small fist fiercely sank into the man's lower abdomen. Goo! The man didn't even have time to scream before the girl's combo hit him. She suddenly raised her leg and kicked the man's crotch. If there were other men present, they would probably subconsciously tighten their legs and hear the sound of an egg breaking. In short, the man who was full of the demeanor of a villain was in so much pain that he couldn't even scream. Emily grabbed the man's ankle and threw him out of the window, 6th floor, like she was throwing trash. At this time Cui Yingying, who came to call her to eat, also walked in. What did you just throw out?" the girl asked curiously. "A bug." Emily clapped her hands and answered very calmly. Cui Yingying suspiciously stuck her head out of the window, but didn't find anything. She didn't pay much attention and just took Emily back to the dining room, waiting for her father to come back so they could eat. Half an hour later the food was already cold, but Cui Yingying's father still hadn't come home. Just as Emily's patience was about to run out, the home phone rang. Cui Yingying looked at Emily apologetically, then went to answer the phone. Jasmine, on the other hand, took this opportunity to steal some food. The moment Cui Yingying came back, Emily returned to his previous unmoving state. "Sorry, my father has reached a critical point in his research, so he can't come back for now," the girl said in a lonely voice. "Let's eat by ourselves." Emily looked at her, who had her head lowered, and suddenly asked, "Are you free now?" Cui Yingying didn't understand and nodded. Then let's go to my house. So our devil lord raised her hands and announced. Chapter 36. The man in the gray robe was sprawled on the roof. A group of cockroach-like black beetles were moving back and forth on his dangling ankle. Just by being grabbed, the bone in his ankle was crushed and fractured. As for the other part, it was already too late to save it. Why did this happen? He just wanted to kidnap a little brat. This kind of thing was not even in the top 3 things he had done. How could he have met such a ruthless person? The man's eyes were dead. He twitched a little and then a ferocious look appeared on his face. Even if I don't give up 5 million, I will definitely take revenge. Just wait for me. Parting line. When Emily returned to Ying's apartment, Su Xinxing was preparing noodles in the kitchen. Seeing that Jasmine had returned, his face revealed a relieved expression. You're finally back. I couldn't even get through to your phone. I was so worried. He was mainly worried about the safety of the earth. Putting down his chopsticks, he wiped his hands on his apron. I know you're tired of the takeout from the place where I work. How about we eat noodles today? As for friends, don't worry. You'll get one eventually. He thought that Emily came back so late because he didn't make any real friends and couldn't bring anyone home. He thought that Emily was embarrassed by his boasting yesterday. Sorry to disturb you. Cui Yingying, who was following behind Emily, greeted Su Xinxing timidly. Hello, I'm Emily's classmate. My name is Cui Yingying. Su Xinxing was stunned. Emily's little face was full of pride. Could it be that Emily has something on you? Su Xinxing asked worriedly. No. Cui Yingying's mouth twitched. Why do you ask? Because my Emily isn't good at making friends. I can't deny that. Thinking of the things that happened to her in school, Cui Yingying could only smile bitterly. Mr. Landlord, we brought meat back. Emily turned a deaf ear to the two of them slandering him. He raised the plastic bag in his hand and said proudly, thank us. Woo, because Qin Xingyan wasn't around, Su Xinxing didn't have a place to collect rent. Song Yu was busy with her accounting exam, so she didn't come to work for the past few days. As a result, the standard of food in Ying apartment dropped again and again. If Su Xinxing hadn't found a temporary job in Shaxian a few days ago, they would have to go back to the days when salted vegetables were just plain porridge. Thanks a lot. Do you want to ride on my shoulder or lift me up? He asked Emily reluctantly. This is sexual harassment, landlord. Emily gave him a look of disdain. Su Xinxing didn't say anything. He just stared at Emily's washboard then. He sneered. Emily kicked Su Xinxing's leg hard. Then, ignoring the latter rolling on the ground, he ran to the kitchen to get a few plates and prepared to pour out the food he brought. Sorry for making you laugh. After noticing Emily's strange look, Su Xinxing immediately got up, pretended nothing happened and smiled elegantly. No, I just think that you have a good relationship with Emily. Cui Yingying showed some envy then asked, are you Emily's? I'm her guardian. If I have to say, I'm probably her father or something like that. Su Xinxing answered with some uncertainty. But I heard her call you landlord, because I'm the landlord of this apartment. Su Xinxing said matter-of-factly. Cui Yingying felt that her understanding was not on the same channel as his explanation. Let's eat. Before Cui Yingying could figure out what was going on, Emily was already knocking on the table and waiting for dinner. Oh, my noodles. Su Xinxing also came back to his senses and screamed as he ran back to the kitchen. So the main dish for dinner turned into a suspicious paste. Even so, the atmosphere at the table was very good. There weren't many people, but the unique atmosphere of Sakura Apartments made people involuntarily intoxicated. Especially the conversation between Emily and Su Xinxing. It always made Cui Yingying want to laugh. It's so late, Yingying, is your family okay? Because dinner started late, it was almost 8 o'clock by the time it ended. The sky outside the window was already completely dark. Most people would be worried if they didn't come home this late. I'm okay. Cui Yingying replied with a smile, but the faint bitterness in her smile made Su Xinxing understand something. It seemed that although she was quite financially comfortable, this girl seemed to be a poor child. If that's the case, why don't you take a shower here before going back? So Su Xinxing suggested. Although my family is poor, when the apartments were built, they paid special attention to the public bathrooms. The inside of the bathrooms is much more luxurious than the outside. Although not many people knew about it, there was a hot spring in the basement of Sakura Apartments. But the temperature was a bit strange. It's okay, I don't have any clothes to change into. Although she was sweating a lot, Sakura Apartments only had electric fans, and because there were outsiders, the air conditioner Molly sent couldn't work. Cui Yingying still smiled and refused Su Shenxing's invitation. After Emoli came back from the bathroom, Cui Yingying decided to say goodbye. I'm really happy today, thank you for your hospitality. She thanked Su Shenxing, who was about to go take a shower. Oh, no need, no need. Emoli, you're not going to send me off. Between friends, there's no need to be so polite. Emoli, who was lying on the sofa, said righteously. Look away from the TV before you say something like that. In the end, Emoli was kicked out of the house by Su Shenxing and went to send Cui Yingying off. Emoli walked in front of her angrily and kept saying bad things about Su Shenxing. But for some reason, Cui Yingying felt that the relationship between the two of them was at a level that ordinary family members couldn't compare to. Hey, Emily, what's the relationship between you and your landlord? She couldn't help but ask. The relationship between the landlord and the tenant. Emoli's little face had a "what are you talking about?" expression as he answered matter-of-factly. No, I'm talking about your relationship with him. Cui Yingying realized that her question was a bit abrupt and could only speak incoherently. After Emoli realized that Cui Yingying wasn't joking, he put his finger on his chin and thought for a moment before answering. When I came to this world, he was already by my side. That's it. So that's it. He didn't know if Cui Yingying misunderstood, but the girl showed a gentle smile of understanding. Chapter 37. Cui Yingying felt that it was a bit dangerous for Emoli to go home alone at night, so she didn't ask him to send her home. She only asked Emoli to go home on his own halfway. Although she clearly thought too much, Emoli didn't know how to be polite, so he was happy to let her go. Seeing Emoli's carefree figure gradually disappear into the night, Cui Yingying felt an indescribable sense of envy. Although Cui Yingying's family couldn't be considered unfortunate, she lost her mother when she was young. Her father was also busy with work or research, so he didn't have much time to spend with her. Even so, she still liked her father very much. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to Jiangjin with him, a foreign city. It was because of this that she felt a bit envious when she saw Emoli, who was always able to stick to Su Shenxing. But if she thought about it from another perspective, after coming to Jiangjin, a foreign place, she immediately met a simple person like Emoli and became friends with him. Although the process and method were a bit subtle, he was actually quite lucky. Thinking about these random things, Cui Yingying returned to her own apartment. After opening the anti-theft door, the lights in the house were off. It was pitch black, but the girl could vaguely feel that someone was in the living room. Dad, you're back? Cui Yingying didn't think too much about it and turned on the chandelier. In the end, she found an unfamiliar man in a gray robe standing in the living room, staring at her with a sinister smile on his face. The girl panicked. She turned around and wanted to run away, but she found that the door handle and cracks behind her were densely covered with black beetles the size of fingernails. Who are you? She really didn't have the courage to grab the door handle that was occupied by the beetles. She could only turn around and try to suppress the trembling in her voice as she asked the man. Yes. It's this feeling of fear. This is a normal situation. It's not normal to rush up and beat someone up, the man muttered thoughtlessly, then smiled sinisterly. You don't need to know who I am. Don't worry, I won't kill you that easily. Or rather, it'll be more troublesome if I kill you. Because what I want is your dad's research data and your friend's life. Countless different types of beetles poured out of his pants and crawled towards Cui Yingying like a tide. The girl who was defeated by fear screamed, but the room was already sealed so not a single sound could be heard. Dividing line, at midnight, Emoli was woken up by the sound of knocking on the window. The girl who was wearing her pajamas used her long sleeves to wipe her eyes. She yawned and opened the curtains impatiently. Outside, there were two stoners grabbing the two corners of a photo and using the antennae on their heads to hit the window. Emoli, who hadn't completely woken up, waved her sleeves and the two beetles were knocked away by an invisible magic. The photo they were grabbing onto fell down. Jasmine stretched out her hand and grabbed the photo through the glass window. In the photo, Cui Yingying was lying in a place full of beetles. Her eyes were full of fear and tears were flowing down her face. It was obvious that she was very frightened. On the back of the photo there were words written with a marker pen. Your friend is in my hands. If you want her alive, come to this address within an hour. Until then, Mo Li's sleepiness had almost disappeared. She squinted her eyes and read for a long time before saying, the handwriting is really ugly. After a while, Su Xinxing, who was sleeping soundly, was dragged out of bed by the little girl, using a hot water bottle. She really did it. Su Xinxing covered his red forehead and looked at Mo Li in disbelief. Mr. Landlord, Mo Li ignored Su Xinxing's resentful eyes and handed the photo to him. Su Xinxing looked at it and his expression became slightly more serious. The handwriting is really ugly. +1. So do you want to help? He shook the photo in his hand. Oh, I can do it myself. As she spoke, the little girl brushed aside her bangs, revealing her jade-white forehead. Can I unlock it to the second stage? Su Xinxing reached out his index finger and tapped her forehead. Then emerald green runes appeared on the girl's forehead and eventually spread all over her body. This made Mo Li look like she was trapped in an emerald human-shaped cage. No problem. The little girl clenched her small fist and had an expression that said, I'm going to beat 10 of you. Then Su Xinxing leaned forward and kissed her forehead. The emerald green runes from her forehead all the way to her chest shattered and disappeared like glass. Then the other runes gradually faded away. At this time, Mo Li looked no different from usual, but if one looked closely, there was an indescribable sense of dissonance from the bottom of their hearts. This was a state unique to powerful beings that did not belong to this world. They were rejected by the world, but the world's correction power could not erase their existence. The only fortunate thing was that Mo Li's body was also in human form, so even if ordinary people saw her, they would not be in danger of her sanity level. Mr. Landlord, Mo Li looked at Su Xinxing, whose eyes turned into dead fish eyes and yawned again. What's the matter? I don't know the way, can I take a taxi? No, there's a map in the phone, see for yourself. Dividing line. At this time, the gray-robed man had already brought Cui Yingying to the agreed place. It was an old factory filled with all kinds of traps, restrictions and mechanisms, waiting for Mo Li to walk into the trap. As for Cui Yingying's father, he had not yet informed him. After all, he was just an ordinary person and at most he would just call the police, which was more convenient to solve. So he put most of his attention on Mo Li from the beginning. When he saw Jasmine leisurely walk in from the main entrance, his entire body started to tremble with excitement. I was just careless last time, this time I'll let you see. He opened the white clay jar beside him, the horror of a goo master who has already set up a position. The king goo cockroach had swallowed the entire old factory, so it was almost impossible for the other party to get help from outside. The number of inferior goo worms in the entire old factory reached 30,000. Even if the successor of the Celestial Master Sect came here, he would not be able to break through the 10,000 goo formation in a short time. However, the 10,000 goo formation, which was already a land of death for ordinary people, was not a fatal blow. The real killer move was the 2-life goo in the clay jar. They were passed down from generation to generation by his sect, and had a history of at least several hundred years. Unless one stepped on the golden core Dao and had a half-immortal body that was impervious to poison, no matter who it was, they would undoubtedly die. Chapter 38. Don't even think about escaping. Or rather, you can't escape anymore. The man stood on the steel beam of the factory and laughed. At the same time, he turned his body slightly so that Mo Li could see the situation behind him. Cui Yingying was hanging on the beam behind her by a rope. Under her feet, countless black beetles piled up into a mountain and slowly rose up towards the girl. Cui Yingying was awake, but she seemed to have lost the ability to speak. She could only make unclear cries. Be as arrogant as you were just now. Seeing that Mo Li was already surrounded by the swarm of insects, the man's voice became more hysterical. Aren't you good at fighting? Come on. Mo Li only looked at him with some disgust, then slowly walked forward. The result was that the man was so shocked that his jaw almost dislocated. Every time Mo Li took a step forward, the insects in front of him would retreat. "What are you doing? She's only one person. Eat her." He screamed at the goo worms. But it was useless. Until now he suddenly remembered that his inferior insects did not have any intelligence. Usually when they saw prey, they would immediately pounce and devour it without saying anything. They would never surround a prey. Just now it was as if the insects could not even get close to the girl. Not only the inferior insects, even the two life insects were the same. They only flew around and made ear-piercing noises, but did not have any intention of attacking the girl. No, if one looked closely at their flight path, one could even vaguely see that they were trying to avoid the girl's sight. Until now, the man's heart was filled with the emotion of fear. You finally realized. Your insects are smarter than you. Emily's footsteps did not stop, but at the same time he raised his head and looked at the man in the gray robe again. This time there was almost no emotion in his eyes. There was no contempt, disgust, or disgust. It was as if he was an ordinary person who accidentally saw an ant. There was no room for argument, no reason to be lucky. Numbers were meaningless. This was the feeling of being suppressed to the point of hopelessness when a lower organism faced the highest existence in the biosphere. Even though the gray-robed man was looking down at Feng Xingjian from a high vantage point, he no longer felt any sense of superiority. There was only endless fear, as well as the fact that he could foresee the extinction of the human race. Just trying to understand what kind of existence the other party was caused his brain to suffer an overload of damage. Waves of dull pain even caused him to lose the strength to continue controlling those goo worms. Thus, the girl's 10,000 goo formation collapsed under his spell, and the insects fled in all directions trying to escape from this place. At this moment, Emily had already arrived below Cui Yingying. With a light leap he saved Cui Yingying. What is this? Cui Yingying had never been involved in the supernatural realm, so she didn't have any relevant knowledge. Although she felt the abnormality on Emily's body, she wasn't too shocked. Emily thought for a moment, then said decisively, "The power of friendship. Who are you trying to fool?" Cui Yingying, who subconsciously complained, stared at Emily. After a while her legs went soft and she hugged him and started crying. To be honest, because Emily was shorter than Cui Yingying by a head, this scene was indescribably funny. Emily's face showed a rare helpless expression. He lightly tapped Cui Yingying's head and the latter immediately fell asleep. Emily carried her on his back and then slowly walked out of the factory. Was he saved? The gray-robed man's body stiffened, and his limbs went soft as he sat on the steel beam. However, Emily suddenly turned his head and said calmly, "Let's go extinct." In the next moment all the goo worms that were still running around lost all signs of life. Even the two goo worms were no exception. Like flies that had been touched by insecticide, they silently fell to the ground, completely dead. The gray-robed man looked at all this in disbelief, but before he could understand what had happened he kept vomiting. Many of the dead worms that he had once reared came out of his mouth, and in the end he only vomited large chunks of black blood. Not long after he vomited until there was nothing left to vomit, and just like that he fell from the steel beam. At the same time, all the people on Earth who reared goo worms of the same type as the gray-robed man suddenly realized that the goo worms they had carefully reared had suddenly died for unknown reasons. Among them, the various low-level goo worms had suffered heavy casualties. It was likely that in the next 100 years, all cultivators who focused on goo worms would completely disappear from the cultivation world. However, this had nothing to do with Emoli anymore. He just raised his hand and waved it, and the abandoned factory was pulled back into the real world. Then he left with Cui Yingying without looking back. Dividing line, worms. So many worms. Molly run. Cui Yingying suddenly woke up from a nightmare, and found herself sprawled on the coffee table in her house, with unfinished homework spread out in front of her. Could it be that everything was just a dream? She tried to recall the nightmare, but found that many scenes had become blurry, and she couldn't even remember them at all. At this time, Emily suddenly walked over with a pot of fragrant things. "Good morning." He greeted Cui Yingying. "Oh." Cui Yingying, who had yet to recover from the shock, replied blithely. Then a new memory appeared in her mind. Right, last night she invited Molly to her house for dinner, and then Molly said he wanted to copy her homework so she could only start doing her homework under his supervision. Then she mysteriously fell asleep. Cui Yingying looked up at the clock in the living room, and found that it was already 6 in the morning. So Emily stayed here for a night? Breakfast. Emily pushed the plate in front of Cui Yingying. Okay, thank you. Cui Yingying picked up the thing inside and gently took a bite, making crunching sounds. The crispy taste was surprisingly good. This toast is pretty good. This is a poached egg. What kind of material changes happened to turn a poached egg into toast? Homework not finished yet. Emily ignored Cui Yingying's somewhat interesting expression and continued to speak. Oh, there's less than an hour left, it's a bit hard to finish this. Cui Yingying muttered dejectedly. Not doing homework on the 3rd day at a new school. She was afraid that the teacher's impression of her would worsen. I'm done, do you want to copy? Molly took out his homework, 10% correct, and asked. Oh, can I? Because we're friends. Emily's words made Cui Yingying silent for a moment, and then the girl showed her most cheerful smile since she transferred. Yes, we're friends. After that, because the error rate was too high, the two were called to the teacher's office to lecture them, but that was another story. Chapter 39. The scorching sun shone down on the entire Jiangjin province, making the coastal city as hot as a steamer. Outside the famous Taoist temple on the outskirts of the city, those immortal-looking fortune-tellers, who wandered around here all year round, were now crowding like quails under the shade of an old pine tree in front of the door. However, there was a rather unconventional guy among them. Su Shenxing listlessly held up a white cloth banner with the words, "Exorcise evil spirits, avoid evil spirits, subdue demons and eliminate demons," and sighed gloomily. Jiangjin University's summer vacation had finally arrived, but Su Shenxing did not belong to the crowd. On the contrary, the annual vacation was a test for him, because the school's cheap cafeteria was closed during this period. Therefore, Sakura Apartments' funds were once again tight. Coupled with the hot summer, not only were there fewer places recruiting workers, but the pay was also much lower than in other seasons. He had no choice but to come here and compete for business with those liars who were full of eloquence. However, he had been setting up his stall for almost a week, but he did not have a single customer. He could only watch those liars make money every day. In fact, he could not blame those customers for being blind. It was just that Su Shenxing's appearance really did not look like a person who was skilled in this aspect. Which exorcist or ghost hunter would wear a white t-shirt, cropped jeans and flip-flops? Compared to him, those immortal-looking old Taoists, monks and the like next to him seemed more professional. Although it was very suspicious that there would be monks outside the Taoist temple. I say, little friend, you are really too unprofessional. Perhaps feeling a little bored, an old Taoist with a fluttering white beard beside Su Shenxing spoke to him and casually found a topic to chat about. I see that you've been here for a week, but you haven't even been able to open your business. Senior, please teach me. Therefore, Su Shenxing immediately cupped his hands and asked the other party. In our line of work, the first thing is appearance. Seeing that Su Shenxing was so tactful, the old man, who was greatly relieved, began to gesticulate. Don't talk about other things, just your appearance alone. You definitely won't be able to catch a big fish, you know? Sure enough, flip-flops won't work. It seems that I can only change to sandals. Su Shenxing suddenly realized. No, that's not the point. The old man looked at Su Shenxing's white t-shirt with a skull printed on it and felt that with this young man's comprehension, he might not be able to do this line of work. Just as Su Shenxing was determined to continue learning from this senior swindler and learn how to fool people, a fortune teller shouted, "The urban management is here." Suddenly, the Taoist priests and monks under the pine trees all picked up the tools they used to eat and scattered like birds and beasts. There was even a fortune teller who pulled up his long sleeves that were unique to ancient scholars, revealing strong arms that were comparable to those of a bodybuilder. He picked up a desk that was filled with all kinds of fortune-telling tools and ran away with a speed that was not inferior to the others. The scene of thousands of people fleeing together was quite spectacular. Only Su Shenxing, who had never seen such a scene for the first time, was stunned for a moment. As a result, he was blocked by a police car with the words, "City Administration," printed on it. Just as Su Shenxing was hesitating whether to be a little more serious about escaping, the person who got out of the car made him feel relieved. "Xiao Jingyi, aren't you in the criminal police brigade?" Why are you with the city administration? The person who came was one of Su Xinxing's few acquaintances, Xiao Jingyi. Hey, don't mention it. 2 days ago, our brigade surrounded a murderer who fled to this area. I accidentally shot that guy's kidney and that guy is still lying in the hospital. I don't know which unscrupulous media outlet leaked this matter, but our Captain Yen was angry and sent me to the city administration. Xiao Jingyi helplessly shrugged his shoulders. Looking at his relaxed appearance, it was estimated that this was just a punishment similar to facing the wall to reflect on one's mistakes. It wouldn't be long before he could be transferred back to the criminal police brigade. No matter what, this guy solved a lot of difficult vicious cases when he was still a rookie, although most of them were helped by Su Xinxing. He was once known as a hero in the criminal police brigade, and was even a legendary figure on TV. Why are you looking for me this time? Since it was him, Su Xinxing simply sat back on the edge of the flower bed and asked lazily, also, do you have a letter this time? I don't have a letter, but if you don't mind, I can invite you to the milk tea shop over there for a while. Police comrade, is there anything urgent that you want to talk to me about? I'll definitely keep my mouth shut. Your attitude changed so quickly. Although I've known this for a long time, don't you have any integrity? Moving, I'm alive. Su Xinxing leaned on the table, blowing the air conditioner in the milk tea shop, drinking the cold milk tea with a look that said, I have no regrets in my life. Then it's time to talk about business, right? Xiao Jingyi ordered a cup of honey grapefruit tea and drank it to moisten his throat. What's the case this time? Su Xinxing looked up, playing with the straw of the milk tea and asked casually, though this time it might be related to you. Xiao Jingyi's expression became slightly more serious. Some time ago, did any supernatural events happen in the city? Su Xinxing tried to recall. The entrance to the underworld almost opened. The sea serpent in the artificial lake. Jiang Jin's spirit vein leaked. The Jiangyue line that almost had an accident. Mo Li's curse that wiped out all the goo worms. Nothing happened. Su Xinxing answered with certainty. Xiao Jingyi's face was full of obvious suspicion. Actually, 2 days ago the criminal police unit received a very special guest. He didn't continue to ask Su Xinxing, but started to talk about his own situation. The person who came was a guy about your age. There was also a little girl who looked similar to Mo Li beside him. In front of the two of them, even Captain Yen has to be respectful. Oh. Su Xinxing's interest was piqued. Let me confirm first. The person you're interested in isn't the little girl beside him, right? Ever since he saw Mo Li's pajamas, Xiao Jingyi had a certain degree of misunderstanding about Su Xinxing's character and sexual preference. Yes. Okay, maybe it wasn't a misunderstanding. Please go on. Su Xinxing stirred the remaining milk tea and the pearls inside, ignoring Xiao Jingyi's expression that said, what the F***ck, I misjudged you. After I asked for a long time, Captain Yen finally told me that they were from the Super Administrative Office. The Super Administrative Office? For someone like me who doesn't have a girlfriend yet, isn't it a bit too early to worry? Su Xinxing hesitantly questioned. It's the Paranormal Administrative Office. Xiao Jingyi almost spat blood on the other party's face. Chapter 40. Supernatural Phenomenon. Su Xinxing was a little interested. He supported his chin with both hands and showed a thoughtful expression. You really haven't heard of it? Seeing Su Xinxing's serious expression, even Xiao Jingyi was a little uncertain. Because I'm a law-abiding good citizen. Your words almost made me spit out the honey grapefruit tea from my nose. Oh, you're so dirty. Su Xinxing covered his remaining milk tea with both hands and showed a disgusted expression to Xiao Jingyi. Anyway, I feel like they're here to find you. You'd better pay more attention. Xiao Jingyi rolled his eyes and then seriously warned him. However, before he finished, Su Xinxing suddenly raised his head and looked at the entrance of the milk tea shop. Xiao Jingyi, who didn't know what was going on, followed his gaze and then saw 2 figures, one tall and one short, coming in. Suddenly, his face became a little pale and his whole body froze. Excuse me, can we sit here? The tall one was a very ordinary-looking man. He was dressed very casually. His colorful short-sleeved shirt and Hawaiian-style beach pants gave people a strange feeling. At this time, this passerby was looking at the confused Xiao Jingyi and the playful Su Xinxing with a smile. The other person next to him was a little girl who was slightly taller than Emily. In the eyes of ordinary people, the girl was probably just an ordinary-looking lowly. However, because of Su Shenxing's ability, ordinary illusions couldn't fool his eyes. The girl, or lowly, was very beautiful. In terms of appearance, even if Su Shenxing had seen in his life, she could be ranked in the top 5. What was more amazing was that she also had long snow-white hair. It wasn't the pale blonde white hair of Russia, nor was it the unhealthy white hair of an old man. It was white hair that didn't exist on Earth. It was pure and beautiful white hair like snow. After speaking, the man didn't ask for Xiao Jingyi's permission and sat down with the lowly next to him. Then you should be the rumored guardian of Jiangjin, right? Without further probing, the man asked Su Shenxing directly. Guardian? Su Shenxing was a little confused. Oh, it's a supernatural creature nearby. Well, it's basically what the monsters call you. The man crossed his fingers on the table and said in a casual tone, as far as we know, the number of demons that died by your hands alone reached double digits this month. He had already killed so many, no wonder he attracted the attention of some forces. Although it had been 3 years since he returned to Earth, the number of supernatural creatures he dealt with in the past 3 years was probably less than half of this month's number. Plus, Su Shenxing was quite well behaved, so he hadn't been discovered until now. While Su Shenxing was still secretly reflecting on his recent actions, the other party had already ordered a cup of oolong delicacies and a strawberry milkshake from the milk tea shop owner under the instruction of the lowly beside him. She also ordered 6 egg tarts and a small stack of durian pastries. I think you guys have the wrong person. After thinking about it, Su Shenxing decided to play dumb. Don't get me wrong, we're not hostile. The man showed a wry smile. I knew that as a member of a national department, coming in contact with strange people like you will definitely subconsciously cause resistance. I originally wanted to find an opportunity to encounter you first. While speaking, he glanced at Xiao Jingyi. The latter was hiding against the wall, shrinking his head and pretending to be a quail. So you guys have the wrong person, Su Shenxing patiently denied. Do you really think we'll directly come to you without any evidence? The man sighed and then slowly said, being able to exchange information with some of the top sects in the country is one of the benefits of working in a national government. I see Bailu Temple. Su Shenxing's pretentious expression finally disappeared, revealing a miscalculation. No wonder Qin Xingyan didn't come back for so long. Su Shenxing more or less knew that she would hand over some information related to him to the sect. The girl herself didn't hide this from Su Shenxing. But he didn't expect that the information would eventually flow to the super-administrative office. Was it an accident or was it intentional by the Bailu Temple? If it was the latter, then he would have to make a big fuss. I want to emphasize again, we don't have any hostility to you. It's not an exaggeration to say that we're sincere. Seeing that Su Shenxing's expression became slightly sinister, the man quickly emphasized again. I think a person who hasn't revealed his name from the beginning to the end can't be considered sincere. Su Shenxing said indifferently. My negligence. The man smiled lightly. Then let me introduce myself, I'm Su Feng. He pointed to the white-haired lowly next to him who was covered in illusion and was licking a milkshake cup. She's my assistant, Xinju. Sure enough, he wasn't a normal creature. Su Shenxing didn't show too much surprise at the man's strange name. Here, I apologize for investigating your information without your consent. Su Feng first showed an apologetic expression to Su Shenxing. Then I won't continue to say superfluous words. Mr. Su Shenxing, can you join us and work for the country? Don't worry, salary and other things are negotiable. You can take 2 days off every week and there are various public holidays. Su Feng then said his purpose. In this way, you don't need to work hard all day to make money, right? But I refuse. Su Shenxing raised his body, lying on the soft chair of the milk tea shop, and said without hesitation, what I, Su Shenxing, like to do is to say no to people who think they have everything under control. Okay, actually I more or less guessed it. Su Feng didn't show too much surprise, he just shrugged. Most people who have power advocate freedom and don't like to be restrained. Don't you want to try to persuade me? Su Shenxing saw that the other party seemed to give up and couldn't help but ask curiously. It's just routine. Don't worry, as long as you don't do anything that endangers social safety, we won't provoke you for the time being. Seeing that Su Shenxing showed a somewhat surprised expression, Su Feng smiled bitterly and complained, "To be honest, recently there have been too many supernatural phenomena and strange creatures in this area. I'm tired enough just dealing with them. The headquarters didn't send more people. Some time ago I even started to lose hair. I recommend you to use Wang hair growth solution." Su Shenxing suddenly said. Is that effective?" Su Feng's eyes lit up as if he saw a kindred spirit. "I used some hair growth solution before but it didn't work. I experienced it personally. The scalp will heat up. It should be effective." "Oh, that's great." Just as the two of them were immersed in their exchange of experience with hair growth solution, the white-haired loli put the cup in her hand on the table. The crisp sound of the collision made the two people who were thousands of miles away from the topic come back to their senses. "Right, there's one more thing." Su Feng patted his head. "Although the source of the news is not necessarily correct, your tenant seems to be under house arrest by the Bailu Temple." Chapter 41. Crimson Cloud Mountain was an inconspicuous mountain among the rolling mountains of Zhejiang. Theoretically speaking, it should have been able to become a popular tourist attraction like the surrounding mountains. In fact, Crimson Cloud Mountain with its legendary 7 sceneries had the potential to become a tourist attraction. However, reality was completely different. It was one of the least visited places in Zhejiang National Nature Park. The reason was simple. On Crimson Cloud Mountain, there existed a hidden Taoist sect that had been passed down for nearly 1,000 years, the Bailu Temple. After hearing that the only source of rent for his family was under house arrest, Su Shenxing went home to pack his luggage and brought Emily to Zhejiang, which was not far from Jiangjin. Thankfully it was summer vacation. Otherwise his grades would have dropped to 0 due to long periods of absenteeism. However, in an unexpected place Su Shenxing encountered his first tricky problem. "I say, you should be appeased by now, right?" Faced with Su Shenxing's consolation, Emily still crossed his arms and didn't even look at him. "I don't know such a selfish landlord. I just didn't invite you to the milk tea shop. Do you have to be angry for so long?" The reason was that Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi were talking at the milk tea shop, but they didn't invite Emily. "I also want to drink Bing Bing's milk tea." Molly continued to pout and throw a tantrum. "Stop it. Weren't you doing your summer homework at your friend's house yesterday?" Emily was like a puppy. He puffed up his cheeks and made an ambiguous sound. He rolled on the ground covered with fallen leaves. "Hey. When we bring Qin Xingyan back I'll take you to the milk tea shop." In the end Su Shenxing compromised. Anyway, if Qin Xingyan was there she would probably pay. Su Shenxing made a small calculation in his heart. Hearing him say that, Emily reluctantly accepted and stood up from the ground. But then again, there really aren't many people here. Although there were paths in the forest, there was hardly anyone on Red Clouds Mountain. This was a great contrast to the other peaks which were packed with people. In addition, Su Shenxing was more concerned about another matter. According to the information provided by that guy named Su Feng, the great secluded sects would definitely set up something like a mountain protecting formation outside their own sect to protect their 1,000-year-old foundation. The White Deer Monastery was naturally no exception. It was said that while the mountain protecting formation outside the monastery did not possess outstanding offensive capabilities, it possessed the ability to interfere with one's perception. If an ordinary person were to walk along the forest path, they would very quickly be led to another mountain peak and would not be able to find the true path of the forest path. This was not a problem. In fact, it was a normal protective measure. For Su Shenxing there was only one problem. He was actually unable to detect the so-called Great Protective Mountain Array at all. He was actually quite confident in his attainments in the field of illusion. Even in the huge underground maze created by the Demon King of another world, he managed to escape after turning the Minatono's inside into sauced beef. But this time he had no clue at all. Not only Su Shenxing but even Emily could only shake his head at Su Shenxing after carefully sizing it up for a long time, indicating that even he could not find any flaws. In the end, Su Shenxing, who was at his wit's end, could only call Su Feng, hoping to get some hints from him. Su Feng, who had originally intended to find an opportunity to build a good relationship with Su Shenxing, naturally agreed. He asked Su Shenxing to wait for a moment, and he would ask his colleagues in the department who knew about this matter. I didn't expect there to be such a technique on Earth that even we are helpless against. Sushunshing looked at Red Cloud's mountain, which looked normal in front of him. There was not the slightest bit of fear in his eyes. Instead, there was a feeling of eagerness to give it a try. It's really exciting. Since there was such a powerful formation, the person who set it up naturally couldn't be weak. This time he might really be able to meet a tough opponent. Ever since he defeated the Demon King, Sushunshing still hadn't felt this excited for a long time. Not long after, Su Feng contacted him. I asked around and found out that there's a problem, he said abruptly on the phone as soon as he got on the phone. What do you mean? Sushunshing was somewhat baffled. Well, about 3 days ago, a developer was planning to build a tourist villa at the foot of Red Cloud's mountain. When he was building on a large scale, he accidentally dug out the eye of the Bailu Temple's mountain protecting formation. In other words, right now the Bailu Temple doesn't have a mountain protecting formation, so it's as it should be. By the way, the lay disciples of the Bailu Temple are currently suing the developer for compensation. Sushunshing's mood was currently crumbling. In more popular terms, it was really *ket up. No wonder he couldn't detect the mountain protecting formation. It turned out that it didn't exist at all. Why was he being so careful? He silently led Emoli up the mountain on the winding path. Emoli seemed to understand that Sushunshing was in a bad mood, and obediently followed behind him. Up ahead is private property. Tourists are not allowed to enter. A wild Bailu Temple disciple jumped out of the bushes. Do you know Qin Xingyan? Sushunshing looked at the other party and asked coldly. Senior Qin? Why are you looking for her? The other party had originally seen that Sushunshing and Emoli didn't have any spiritual aura on them and were just two mortals, so he didn't want to bother them. Now that he heard Qin Xingyan's name, he obviously became much more serious. After all, Qin Xingyan was the leader of this generation of cultivators, especially those of the orthodox path. His cultivation was profound, and his attainments in Taoist magic were so high that he could even be compared with the cultivators of the previous generation. Moreover, as the eldest disciple of the Bailu Temple, she could be said to be the pride of the entire Bailu Temple, and the idol of the other disciples. Sushunshing, who was completely unaware of this, only thought that the name Xingyan A Dream was quite useful. I just want to ask, where is she now? Senior Qin is currently in the confinement room. The disciple didn't intend to tell the other party the secrets of the sect, but for some reason he couldn't help but answer when he saw Emoli's eyes. How long has she been there? About 1 or 2 months ago, I guess. Where is the confinement room? Behind the mountain. At this point, the disciple suddenly woke up, and only then did he realize that his Taoist heart had been broken. You two evil people. But before he finished speaking, he saw Sushunshing casually break off a tree branch by the roadside and wave it lightly at him. Chapter 42. In the dark confinement room, the haggard Qin Xingyan hugged her knees and curled up on a pile of slightly damp and moldy straw. The small windowless room was filled with the smell of moldy straw. Coupled with the dry and hot temperature, it was unbearable. Because there was nothing to refer to time except for the first 2 days when her phone still had power, Qin Xingyan had lost the concept of time. How long had he been in this gloomy house? A week? 10 days? Or more than a month? Not far from the straw pile was the iron door of the confinement room. Under the iron door, there was a small hole in the iron door that had not been touched. The person taking care of her had changed the food several times, but she had not eaten for a long time. Although it was not to the extent that she could not eat, if it was just a few days she could still endure it. Qin Xingyan felt like her brain was filled with lead and she was dizzy and could not get up. The meridians in her body were in a state of near paralysis at the moment, and she could not draw out even a little bit of spiritual power. She was able to command the world of cultivation in this era, but now she was no different from an ordinary mortal woman. How long had it been since she felt powerless? Qin Xingyan leaned against the wall. More than half of the lime used to paint the wall had peeled off, exposing the red brick wall inside. She stared at the egg-sized light leak on the roof in a daze. Although it was troublesome when it leaked on rainy days, it was usually the only light source in the room. This feeling of weakness. It's just like that time, she whispered softly, and her thoughts gradually sank into the memories. Qin Xingyan was an orphan. As for whether her parents abandoned her or both of them had passed away because it was too long ago, even Qin Xingyan herself could not remember. For as long as she could remember, she had been living in the hospital. At that time her body was very weak and she had to lie in the hospital bed all day long. She could not walk for more than half an hour every day. Whenever she saw other healthy children, she could not help but think that the world was really unfair. Why was it that other people could have a healthy body, but she had to drag this sickly body and lie on the hospital bed all the time? Qin Xingyan was much more mature than his peers, probably because he had no parents. She knew very well that she was a useless person. Although she could no longer remember the name of the illness, it was undoubtedly something similar to a terminal illness for mortals. No matter how much money was invested, it would not be able to cure it. It would only be like a bottomless pit, constantly devouring large amounts of money. Qin Xingyan was raised by a charity with a decent reputation, but they wouldn't invest a lot of money into a terminally ill child. $1 million couldn't cure Qin Xingyan, but it could save more unfortunate children. The disease would devour her life bit by bit, causing her to die of organ failure at the age of 6 or 7. If that was the case, then this could only be considered the life of an unfortunate child at most. However, Qin Xingyan had a decisive difference from others. She could see supernatural creatures that ordinary people could not see with their naked eyes. In this big hospital where life and death were very common, this ability brought her a lot of trouble. "Dr. Chen, this little girl is spouting nonsense again. What's wrong?" She said that there was a woman at the door with hair down to her feet. I went to the surveillance camera to check the video, but there was no such person at all. Children like to lie like this. Give her some sleeping pills and let her fall asleep early. This kind of conversation had happened more than once at the door of Qin Xingyan's ward. At first Qin Xingyan didn't understand why. There was clearly a woman in a white dress, with coarse hair that reached her feet and no pupils. She was smiling strangely into the room, but no one could see her. They even accused her of lying. It was not until later that she vaguely understood that she was the only one who could see those things. However, by that time, whether it was the nurse or the doctor, they had already felt that she was a strange and talkative child. Subconsciously, they had already alienated Qin Xingyan. Why was I born? Is it really a good thing for me to live in this world? Why am I the only unlucky one? The lonely little girl would always sit alone in the hospital bed and stare blankly at the light between the gaps of the curtains. Because her illness was sensitive to sunlight, the curtains in the ward were closed all year round. Even if she wanted to see the scenery outside, she could only do so on rainy days or at night. Until one night, when the little girl was half awake, she heard someone knocking on the window. Who is it? Because her hand was still on the drip, the girl could not open the curtains. At the same time, she did not want to press the bell to call the nurse. Even if she did, they would not believe her anyway. Because her ward was on the 5th floor. "Hello, my name is Qing Meng." A boy's or a girl's voice came from outside the window. "My friend and I came here to play, but we accidentally got separated." "I don't know your friend." Qin Xingyan curiously turned to look at the window. Unfortunately, the window was covered by the heavy canvas curtains as usual. "Yes, I know." The voice outside sounded a bit depressed. "But they will definitely come for me." "Then what are you doing here?" Qin Xingyan asked curiously. "I'm sorry, actually I haven't eaten for a few days." The voice outside sounded a little embarrassed. "This world is too dangerous. There are metal boxes running around everywhere. I was almost hit by them a few times. I didn't even have the chance to look for food." After a pause, it continued, "I heard from some other guys that there is a little human girl here who can see us, so I came here to try my luck." Sure enough, it was also that kind of thing. "What do you want to eat?" Although the little girl was a bit resistant to the supernatural creatures that made her life more difficult, she hesitated for a moment and asked tentatively, "Let's make it clear first, eating people is absolutely not allowed." "Don't worry, I'm not a monster that eats people. I eat fruits or nuts. If that doesn't work, rice is fine too." The other party answered readily. After a long illness, Qin Xingyan looked up at his drip bottle and found that there was not much left in it. He pulled out the needle himself, then rummaged in the drawer of the bedside table and took out a small bag of sunflower seeds. It was the sunflower seeds that the charity sent to visit her last time, and also to shoot a promotional video for the charity. However, not only did that person not eat it, but he also left it here. The little girl herself was not interested in sunflower seeds, so she threw it in the drawer and forgot about it. It was not until today that she saw it again. Chapter 43. Are melon seeds considered nuts? Qin Xingyan wasn't sure. Yes, of course. The person outside the window said impatiently. Thus, the young girl climbed out of bed and walked to the window barefooted. She took a deep breath before she made up her mind and pulled open the curtains. The appearance of the guest outside was finally exposed in front of her. Qin Xingyan had seen a lot of strange creatures since she was young because of her spirit vision. She was mentally prepared to see flying barbarians, long-necked monsters, or erratic ghosts, but the other party's body was still beyond her expectations. That was a cyan-colored one. A sparrow? The little girl blinked her eyes and muttered in disbelief. Even sparrows can turn into monsters now? I'm not a sparrow. The sparrow named Qing Meng spread its wings and protested in dissatisfaction. I'm a noble, ugh. Halfway through its words, it suddenly became listless as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over its head. It just kept repeating, I'm not a sparrow. Do you want some melon seeds? At that time, Qin Xingyan didn't think too much about it. He just shook the plastic bag in his hand and asked. Yes, cried the sparrow, hopping to and fro on the windowsill in high spirits. The little girl opened the window and shivered in the cool night wind. Then she tore open the plastic bag for the sparrow and put it by the window. Qing Meng immediately flapped its wings and flew to the plastic bag. It grabbed a melon seed with its thin little claws and started to peck at it. The little girl found it interesting. She simply leaned against the window and watched the sparrow eat the melon seeds while enjoying the night wind. However, the sparrow's beak was too short and small, so it was very inconvenient for it to peck. So the little girl simply helped it peel the melon seeds. You're such a good person. Qing Meng ate and took, stuffing a few melon seeds into her bag. She thanked the little girl repeatedly. Speaking of which, why are you living in such an unclean house? Not only are there a lot of messy spirits, but the smell is also very bad. As it spoke, it even stuffed its head under its wings, as if it wanted to use this action to emphasize how bad the smell of disinfectant alcohol in the hospital was. Because I've lived here since I was very young and I'm sick. The little girl's face was a little sad. She opened her hands and gestured a distance that was very large for her. It's a very serious illness, so I can't go out. That's unfortunate. The sparrow peeled the melon seed's shells. After making sure that it didn't miss any seeds, it raised its head and looked at the little girl with its little round eyes. You've been staying here all this time and never go out? Although this place can't be compared to my hometown, I have to say that there are still many places with good scenery. For example, those houses that are as tall as mountains, densely packed people like ants, and many beautiful posters. If only the air here could be fresher, that would be even better. How nice. I'm afraid I won't be able to see it for the rest of my life. The little girl revealed an envious expression when she heard that. Sparrow stared at the girl's face for a while and suddenly said, How about this? You prepare food for me and I'll tell you about the scenery outside every night when I come to eat. How about that? Of course I'm a noble. Ahem. Anyway, don't doubt my words. The sparrow patted its chest with its thin claws. It looked very unreliable. Speaking of which, it was quite difficult for a bird to do this. But the little girl didn't doubt it at all. After the sparrow finished speaking, she nodded and agreed. So every night, the green sparrow would fly to the little girl's window and use its beak to knock on the window as a secret signal. The little girl would also secretly hide all kinds of food. When she heard the secret signal, she would open the window and feed the sparrow. The sparrow would always eat all kinds of fruits, which the little girl stole from her friends, or the messy patient's meal. At the same time, it would tell the little girl the interesting parts of its day. Although Green Dawn was just a sparrow, its eloquence was surprisingly good. When it talked about its experiences, it even made the little girl feel like she was there. Even the sparrow didn't realize that. Originally, it just wanted to find its two relatives and immediately return to its hometown from this dangerous place. But after it met the little girl, its mind changed subtly. Although it still tried to flap its wings and soar in the sky above the city every day, its attention was no longer on finding its two relatives among the birds. Instead, it looked down from the sky and used its eagle-like vision to remember all the interesting things in the city. Then it waited for the feeding and storytelling time every night. Although the little girl still couldn't walk out of the hospital, the sparrow's narration for nearly half a year gave her a considerable understanding of the world outside the door. A human society was vividly displayed in front of her. Of course, the secret meeting between the two of them wasn't always smooth. The little girl secretly chatted with the sparrow several times at night, which was seen by the nurses on night duty. The nurses who couldn't see the sparrow naturally felt that the little girl's mental illness might have worsened. So, while giving her mental counseling, preaching, they kept changing her ward to prevent her from opening the window to look outside. In addition, the intercepted food every day would occasionally be noticed. At that time, there would naturally be troubles like preaching and taking away the intercepted food and throwing it away waiting for the little girl. But the little girl didn't just lie on the bed numbly like before and wait for the end of her life. Instead, she began to secretly resist the nurses. When she changed her ward, she would inform the sparrow through a note or other means, and the sparrow would naturally find her. When the food was taken away, she would go to other wards and pretend to be pitiful. Many patients were not young. When they saw the pitiful appearance of the little girl who was old enough to be their daughter or granddaughter, they naturally overflowed with love and gave her some food. Different from the unchanging days in the past after the sparrow appeared, the little girl's life gradually began to become interesting. The little girl's smile became more and more and she became more cheerful. So much so that the doctors and nurses who had been estranged from her gradually accepted her again after fighting with the little patient over food. She lived like this for nearly half a year. Then her condition worsened. Chapter 44. Bang 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 bang. A rhythmic knocking sound came from outside the window. Cough cough. Qingming, are you here? Cough cough. The little girl dragged her weak body to the window and opened it as usual. Yo, how are you feeling today? The sparrow flew into the room, circled the girl's head twice and landed on the window. Cough cough, much better than yesterday. The little girl's haggard face showed a smile, and then she took out a walnut from the pocket of her hospital gown. I'm sorry, Qingming. Cough cough, the nurse auntie didn't allow me to go out so I couldn't get anything to eat today. This is the only thing I have. It's okay, I'm not picky. The sparrow jumped onto the walnut that was bigger than its head and started to peck at it. Is there a story today? The little girl coughed a few times and asked the sparrow. Yes, there are many stories. For example, in the city park today. As usual, the sparrow pecked at the walnut while telling the little girl what it saw and heard. But after a while it still didn't get a response from the little girl, which made it curious. So it raised its head and found that the little girl had fallen to the ground and lost consciousness. Oh no. Help, help. Damn, I forgot that the mortals in this world can't hear my voice. The sparrow circled the room in a panic for a few rounds before flying to the nurse's station in the hospital. It made a big fuss there, scaring the nurses who thought they had encountered a supernatural event. It also made them notice the little girl's strange behavior. When the little girl regained consciousness, she found herself lying on a pure white hospital bed with an oxygen mask on her face. A doctor by the bed was recording something when he saw her wake up. He first scolded the little girl for being immature. Her body was so weak, but she still opened the window to let the cold wind in. She must have a death wish. Then he saw the little girl's lowered head and looked depressed, so he comforted her that she was fine for now and not to worry too much. After the doctor left, the little girl raised her head and looked at the window, but Qingmeng's figure was gone, and only half a walnut was left. After that, the girl's physical condition deteriorated day by day. Although the sparrow still flew to her window every day and pecked at the window, the number of times the girl had the strength to get out of bed to open the window decreased. However, the sparrow didn't care. It always talked to the girl about the scenery outside through the glass. When the girl apologized to it for not being able to get food, it would peck at the walnut twice, indicating that she didn't need to care. He didn't know what method the sparrow used, but that half of the walnut seemed to have taken root on the windowsill. The wind couldn't blow it away and the rain couldn't break it. Even if other birds saw it, they didn't dare to peck at it. No matter how slow-witted the little girl was, she could tell that this little sparrow was different from how it was half a year ago when it almost starved to death. In the past half a year, it had soared through the wind and rain, and its once weak wings had become much stronger. Its ability to see everything, no matter how big or small, must have allowed it to find other ways to hunt for food. It was only here to see her. This made the little girl's heart feel warm. It also gave her enough courage to accept all kinds of treatment, because she knew that there was always a green sparrow waiting for her by the window of her ward. After a few days, the nurses in the hospital began to talk about a Taoist master coming to the hospital. The little girl was curious and asked a nurse she had a good relationship with. In the end, she found out that the reason was that a few days ago when the sparrow made a scene at the nurse's station in order to call someone to save her. Mortals couldn't see green dawn, so it was naturally regarded as a supernatural incident when it made a scene at the nurse's station. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the scene at that time, it was as if there was an evil spirit causing trouble. Although not many people believed it, the head nurse, who was one of the people involved, had an ancestor who was related to a very famous Taoist temple. That Taoist temple's master, who had long disappeared from the world, was actually invited by her. After understanding the ins and outs of the matter, the little girl felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She knew very well that although the sparrow was very likely to be a legendary monster, it was just a little monster that didn't even have a place to eat half a year ago. In the end, it had no choice but to come here to beg for food from a human. If it was really met by the master of the Taoist temple, it would undoubtedly die. From that day onwards, no matter how Green Dawn knocked on the window and talked to the little girl, she just bit her lips tightly and covered her head with the quilt, ignoring it, hoping that it would be disappointed in her and leave. She didn't know how much time had passed, but the window in her ward finally stopped making banging sounds. And that half of the walnut at some point in time was left with some residue. The little girl's first friend in her life disappeared from her life just like that. Although she had expected it at that time, she was still very sad. Her condition, which had been improving, took a turn for the worse. Within a few days she could only lie in bed and struggle at death's door. It was a night. The sleeping little girl seemed to have sensed something and opened her eyes. Then she saw a sparrow which was emitting a fluorescent green light in the dark night, landing on her bed and looking at her with a pair of bright eyes. "That's great." Green Dawn broke the silence between the two and said happily, "I thought something had happened to you. I was so scared that I almost ran to the mistress to ask for an elixir of immortality." "Why are you still here?" The little girl didn't know whether she was angry or happy. She only felt that her tears kept flowing. "There will soon be a very powerful Taoist priest here. You will be beaten to death by him." "Is that why you're ignoring me?" Green Dawn wasn't stupid. It only took a little thought for it to understand the reason why the little girl was acting strangely these few days. It jumped around the little girl's bed like a real sparrow, looking very happy. But then its raised tail drooped down again. "Have to go." The little girl didn't answer. She just buried half of her face in the quilt. "My two brothers found me. I have to go home with them," Green Dawn said dejectedly. "Oh, then hurry up and go." The little girl didn't know if it was because she was angry or something, but she didn't look at Green Dawn. She only stared at the oxygen tube not far away as if it had grown a flower. "Do you know? Actually, I'm not a monster, so even if that powerful Taoist priest you mentioned comes, he won't do anything to me." Qing Meng continued, "I'm a green bird, a spiritual bird." The little girl knew that Green Dawn wanted her to ask it to stay. If she really did ask, with Green Dawn's personality, it might really stay. But she didn't want Green Dawn to take any risks for her. So the two of them, one human and one bird, remained silent. After a long time, Green Dawn suddenly pulled a tail feather from its tail and put it on the little girl's chest. "We, the cyan bird, grow 3 tail feathers in our lifetime. Each one has the power to bring happiness to others. Qingyan, I hope you can get healthy. Then one day," Qing Meng's voice turned a little hazy, "one day, I hope we can meet again in the immortal realm." Green Dawn left. The little girl didn't even know how it disappeared, but from then on, no matter where she went, she would never forget to bring that feather that was as beautiful as a work of art. Her illness also recovered quickly, which made the doctors exclaim that it was a miracle. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, A middle-aged man in a Taoist robe passed by her room and was attracted by the little girl's talent. "I'm the head of the Bailu Temple Yin Guanyu. Girl, do you want to become an immortal?" End of memory. So much time has passed in the blink of an eye. Leaning against the wall, Qin Xingyan was in a daze. To be honest, she had almost forgotten Green Dawn's appearance and voice. But the last sentence, "I hope we can meet again in the immortal realm," kept echoing in her ears. This was also the biggest motivation for her to concentrate on cultivation. "It's about time to continue cultivating." Qin Xingyan sighed and collected her thoughts. She struggled to sit cross-legged, intending to cultivate her cultivation method. But at this moment there was a loud bang. The top half of the confinement room along with the roof and the door disappeared, leaving behind a broken wall that was less than 3 feet tall. In front of the confinement room, the landlord, who was holding a green foxtail that she didn't know where, smiled at her. "Yo, I'm here to pick you up." "Really, senior?" The little girl was stunned for a moment, then she smiled bitterly. "I'm just cultivating." Chapter 45. It all started when Qin Xingyan returned to the Bailu Temple. At that time, because of Jiang Jin's problem with the spirit vein, the girl had no choice but to return to her sect and ask her master for a solution. Unfortunately, her master was also helpless and could only pin his hopes on the mountainous collection of Taoist books in the Bailu Temple. This shouldn't have been a problem. After all, the White Deer Monastery had an elder who was in charge of managing the Taoist scriptures. Even if the elder didn't know how to solve the problem of the spirit vein, he would at least know which corner of the vast library contained the relevant scriptures. If Qin Xingyan was left to her own devices, it would be too late for her to search for the scriptures. But before the elder found the books related to the spirit vein, he noticed that the gift brought back by Qin Xingyan, the tooth of the Qiongqi, was extraordinary. Although he was not sure what kind of creature this thing came from, the condensed spiritual energy on it could not be faked. Even the best spiritual stone in the sect could not compare to 1/10 of this tooth. It should be noted that the Bailu Temple was one of the better Taoist sects in modern times. The best spiritual stone they had was the leftover material of the jade annulus of He clan, which was used to carve the jade seal. Compared to other non-renewable resources like spiritual stones, which would turn into ashes after using up all their spiritual energy, this piece of the jade annulus of He clan had the ability to absorb spiritual energy from the void and store it. It could be said that as long as the spiritual energy was not overdrawn, this thing could be used as an inexhaustible source of spiritual energy. Both the righteous and the evil sects coveted this piece of the jade annulus of He clan in the Bailu Temple. In this era where spiritual energy was scarce, this kind of thing was even more important. But compared to the tooth brought back by Qin Xingyan, it was a little weak. Let's put it this way. Even if we don't do anything, we just have to find a way to destroy the tooth and release the spiritual energy inside. It's enough to turn Crimson Heaven's mountain into a paradise filled with spiritual energy. At the very least, the White Deer Monastery won't have to worry about spiritual energy for the next 300 years. This matter, which concerned the fate of the sect, naturally caused the upper echelons of the White Deer Monastery to be shaken. Almost all the old monsters in the sect who could still move jumped out, all for the sake of preventing the other sects from coveting this supreme treasure before the White Deer Monastery settled down. In this situation, Qin Xingyan was once again pushed to the heart of the storm. The unprepared girl had to deal with countless compliments and flattery all day long. She couldn't help but complain to one of the initiators, "Hey, I thought you said you were just a little monster." In the end, the Bailu Temple hollowed out half of Crimson Cloud Mountain and hid the Qiongqi's tooth in the belly of the mountain. They also artificially excavated a spiritual vein, making the Bailu Temple located at the top of the mountain one of the few paradises in this era. In addition, the knowledgeable elder had long forgotten about the problem of Jiang Jin's spiritual vein at the top of Mount Penglai. He only cared about scraping some powder from the tooth and refining it with some spiritual herbs in the sect's collection into a cauldron of elixirs. The first person to benefit from the elixir was naturally the biggest contributor, Qin Xingyan. According to her teacher, this cauldron of elixirs was very successful. When she opened the cauldron to take out the elixir, There was even a flash of purple lightning in the sky. It was almost a tribulation thunder. If Qin Xingyan could refine the elixir, she might be able to break through the shackles and become the first person of the younger generation to set foot on the path of Jindan. Qin Xingyan was very moved. She ate an elixir and ran to the confinement room to cultivate. Then she almost knelt down. The power of Qiongqi was obviously more violent than what a certain knowledgeable elder had estimated. Although the effect of the pill was not bad, the fierce spiritual energy almost burst the young girl's meridians, causing her to lose all her cultivation. Parting line, that's pretty much what happened. Qin Xingyan, who was sitting on the ruins, explained to Su Shenxing what had happened during this period of time. Although it's my fault for going into seclusion without informing you, don't you think you've gone too far? As she spoke, she looked in the direction of the top of the mountain. The majestic Taoist palace that could be seen from the back of the mountain had disappeared. Even now, there was a column of smoke rising in spirals. But couldn't you have called me or something to tell me that you were safe? Su Shenxing was tongue-tied. After a long while she stammered and asked back. There's no signal on the mountain. Her words were reasonable and convincing. Su Shenxing suddenly felt that she had lost. No, it's not my fault. It's the telecommunications. It's all the telecommunications' fault. I used a mobile phone. Senior, this kind of Chinibyu who refuses to admit her mistakes is really ugly. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Well, very good. Mo Li, who was next to them, looked at the small drama between the two while digging out the bowl of rice that was somehow intact from the ruins. He sat on the rafters that were inserted diagonally into the ground and chewed on the dried radish inside. He was a complete mood destroyer. If the people in your sect are really innocent, then I think we should hurry to your main hall. Well, I mean the place where the main hall used to be. Remind your fellow sect members who are grieving over the passing of spring and autumn that their Dao palaces are going to fall soon. Fall? Qin Xingyan asked in confusion. Just now when I asked a group of old men for directions physics, because the resistance was too strong, I was so angry that I directly slapped those old men and the Taoist palace directly into the stratosphere. I think it's about to fall down now. Su Shenxing scratched his face and said with a laugh. This is not something that can be fooled by aha at all. Qin Xingyan hurriedly waved his hand and wanted to fly on his sword, but he forgot that his meridians were damaged. His vision turned black and he almost died. Su Shenxing hurriedly grabbed her and said, Don't panic, hold on tight. After saying that, he turned to Mo Li, who had finished eating the dried radish and was trying to conquer the dried vegetables, and said, Mo Li, help me locate the original location of the Taoist palace. We'll teleport physics. There. By the way, the so-called teleport physics referred to cutting open space and then directly running from the space-time fault to another place in the world. However, Su Shenxing's only permanent location was Sakura Apartments, which had Home's protection. As for the other places, he could only rely on Jasmine's help. In the absence of Jasmine, he could only rely on luck. He had even accidentally run into outer space once. It was also because of that accident that he discovered that he could actually survive in space after opening the cloud scale. Moreover, teleport physics also had a certain degree of influence on the world itself. For the sake of the stability of this world, it could not be used frequently. But now was an emergency, so it should be fine. Right? I want dried fish or I won't do it. Mo Li spat out the strange-tasting dried vegetables in his mouth and took the opportunity to threaten Su Shenxing. Are you a cat? I want dried fish or I won't do it, meow. Have some integrity, Lord Demon King. Chapter 46. Thanks to Su Shenxing and Mo Li's efforts, the Bailu Temple was finally stopped from crashing into Mount Donxiao from the stratosphere. Miraculously, no one in the temple was injured or killed. This was truly a result worthy of celebration. Why do you look like you've succeeded? Weren't you the one who smashed the Taoist palace into the sky? Then Qin Xingyan, who had been watching the whole process, ridiculed her. I've already apologized. What's the use of hell if apologizing is useful? Does that thing really exist? Su Shenxing was shocked. I don't know. The girl answered without hesitation. Hey, the cultivator over there. Qin Xingyan was able to chat and laugh with the super-strong cultivator who had destroyed the Bailu temple with his own strength. Emoli had been there all this time. He even suppressed the other party in terms of aura. The survivors of the Bailu temple. Well, that wasn't the right word. When they first attacked, Su Xinxing deliberately didn't injure them severely. Except for the group of old men and women who were sent to the sky and then brought back, the Bailu temple disciples only suffered scratches at most. In short, the disciples of the Bailu temple all looked at their senior sister with admiration. So, how do you want me to compensate you? Su Xinxing sat on the ground like a hoodlum. Let me say this first, I don't have money. You don't have to emphasize that you don't have money. Qin Xingyan, who had lived in Sakura apartments, naturally knew how poor Su Xinxing was. Our Bailu temple's Taoist palace is almost destroyed. I hope you can help us when we rebuild it. Even if I'm poor, I won't be a brick mover. Delivery and brick mover were about the same level. 200 yuan per day. I'll leave my 50 kilograms here and let you order me around. Qin Xingyan was speechless as he looked at Su Xinxing, who had a righteous look on his face as he sucked up to Su Xinxing. He suddenly felt that he might have understood where Emoli learned his shamelessness from. Thus, the large-scale reconstruction of the Bailu temple began. A master. At noon one day, a disciple of the Bailu temple came to Su Xinxing, who was having lunch, trembling with fear. His forehead was covered in cold sweat and he looked very nervous. Master wants you to go to the side hall. Su Xinxing smiled helplessly. Okay, I got it. Thus, the disciple fled as if he had been granted amnesty. Su Xinxing poked the foot of Emoli, who was lying on the tree and basking in the sun. Are you going? I'm not going. Want to go home? A world without internet. I'll just destroy it. Although he muttered like this, Emoli didn't seem to intend to leave Su Xinxing behind and go back to Ying apartment first. Su Xinxing shrugged and went to the side hall of the Bailu temple alone. This was the only building that escaped disaster because it was far from the main hall. Yo, what's the matter? Su Xinxing entered the main hall and saw a group of people sitting there as if they were discussing something. There's something I want to ask you for help with. The hale and hearty old man sitting in the main seat was the current head of the Bailu temple. His strength was quite good. With the support of the Bailu temple's ley line, he was able to block Su Xinxing for nearly 30 seconds. This was the main reason why Su Xinxing was so impatient that he directly smashed the house into the sky. In addition, although Su Xinxing claimed to be in his 20s, the old man insisted that he must be a reclusive senior. Otherwise he wouldn't be so arrogant. So the honorifics made Su Xinxing's stomach ache a little. Actually, Crimson Heaven Mountain has been targeted by several developers recently. They want to turn it into a tourist attraction. Of course, through the negotiations of our Bailu temple's lay disciples, they have agreed that this kind of development will only stop halfway up the mountain, and they won't touch the back of the mountain. It's not difficult for you to make one or two ordinary people back off, right? Su Xinxing asked curiously. Because they agreed to give the Bailu temple dividends and bear all the costs of rebuilding and maintaining the Bailu temple. The old man said with a wry smile, in this era, it's hard to do anything without money. It's the same for us reclusive people. Of course, those people don't know the truth. They only think that our Bailu temple is an ordinary Taoist temple with more connections. Even an ancient reclusive cultivation sect couldn't withstand the tide of the market economy. After all, almost no one in this era could cultivate to the level of Anidia, so even if they could save on other things they couldn't save on food. Spirit herbs were planted everywhere in the Bailu temple. After all, the spirit energy here was thicker. In terms of price-performance ratio, spirit herbs that were priceless were much better than cabbages. The mountain range near Crimson Heaven Mountain had also become a popular tourist destination because of Jiujiang Nature Park. They couldn't send disciples to hunt, and it would be awkward if they hunted some rare and protected animals. For cultivators, wealth, companionship, methods and land were necessary. Since wealth was the first priority, there was naturally a reason for it. Thinking about it, it wasn't hard to understand why the Bailu temple would agree to the other party's request. So what do you want me to do? Thinking of this, Su Xinxing couldn't help but ask with some confusion, are you going to threaten those developers and make them pay more? No, that's not it. Are you going to make a big fuss and make it difficult for them to deal with so that they'll beg the Bailu temple for protection? I'm good at that, no problem. No way, or rather do you have such experience? Qin Xingyan couldn't help but ridicule. Are you going to kidnap their families? Even for me that's a bit. Su Shenxing looked distressed. What exactly do you think our Bailu temple is like in your head? An illegal religious group that gathers deep in the mountains? As soon as he finished speaking, Su Shenxing reached out and clamped Qin Xingyan's trembling flying sword between his fingers. Then, under the girl's devouring gaze, he laughed and said, I'm kidding, just kidding. But what exactly do you want? I hope you can persuade the monsters of Crimson Heaven's mountain to move to the back of our mountain. As if he didn't see the quarrel between Su Shenxing and Qin Xingyan, the old man said calmly, after all, commercial development will definitely destroy their habitat. Instead of letting them fight with humans and make trouble, it's better to let them settle down in the back of our Bailu temple. We'll give them a land vein to settle down. Forgive me for being blunt, but generally speaking, aren't monsters and cultivators at odds with each other? Su Shenxing raised his hand and asked like a primary school student. However, he was still clamping the powerful flying sword red sleeve between his fingers, so he looked a bit strange. The old man was silent for a long time before he finally heaved a long sigh. His originally stooped figure looked even more dejected. We're all abandoned children of this era. If we can help, we should help. Otherwise, our descendants will only know about the existence of monsters in myths and legends. Chapter 47. But then again, didn't we agree that I have to help rebuild the Bailu Temple's Taoist palace? Don't mess around. You can't do anything at the construction site other than moving bricks and being a hindrance. Qin Xingyan's words left Su Shenxing speechless. Auravaya, the world that Su Shenxing once transmigrated to, has earth elemental magic, which is basically a cheat in civil engineering. However, even though Su Shenxing has all of Jasmine's magic in his body, and at the same time, because of the sacred sword's transformation, he has over 700,000 magic meridians in his body. An average mage only has a 2-digit number of magic meridians. He doesn't have any ability to cast magic. If it wasn't for the fact that he obtained the cloud scale by chance and gained the ability to protect people or objects, he could only be a pure physical warrior. Xingyan, you should go with him. The old man at the head of the table said. Master? Qin Xingyan blinked his eyes in confusion. Don't you have some friendship with some demons? You can use it this time. Master, you know about it. The girl stuck out her tongue. Because of Qing Meng, she was different from the other disciples of the Bailu temple. She had a natural fondness for demons. Although Qing Meng was not a demon but a spiritual beast, it was also because of this that she had some friendship with some of the demons at the foot of the mountain. Although she did not deliberately hide it, the Bailu temple was still one of the leaders of the righteous faction. As the head disciple, she did not need to publicize this kind of situation, which was unclear whether it was good or bad. She thought that not many people knew about it, but she did not expect her master to have seen everything. After a moment of hesitation, she gladly accepted the order and left the side hall with Su Shenxing. They first took a detour and returned to the construction site, where they found Mo Li on a large banyan tree. Mo Li, who was curled up and sleeping in the canopy, had no interest in persuading people to move. It seemed that he did not want to get involved in this matter. Maybe they have Wi-Fi at home. Then Su Shenxing used one sentence to stimulate the girl's enthusiasm. Qin Xingyan rolled his eyes at Su Shenxing's words behind his back. How could a demon who lived in the middle of nowhere have Wi-Fi at home? The three of them walked along the path until they were halfway up the mountain. Qin Xingyan took out an almond yellow talisman from her bag. She didn't take out a lighter, but with a gentle shake of her hand, the talisman ignited and turned into a wisp of smoke before disappearing. A moment later, a young girl wearing a costume that resembled an ancient drama came out of the thicket. Sister Xingyan, when did you come back? Seeing Qin Xingyan standing on the mountain path, the girl with her hair tied up in a bun smiled and greeted her. Then she caught a glimpse of Su Shenxing and Mo Li beside Su Shenxing. She could not help but turn pale with fright. I haven't seen you for such a short time, but you're not only married, you even have a child. Qin Xingyan's face turned red when she heard this. She pulled the girl's hand and said awkwardly, Sister Wan Air, don't talk nonsense. This is Senior Sue, who I met during my training. The other is Senior Sue's sister, Emily. After that, she introduced the woman in the ancient costume to Su Shenxing. This is Sister Wan, my good friend. Oh, hello. Su Shenxing, who thought he knew the ways of the world, quickly went up to greet her. The girl grinned at Su Shenxing, making the latter confused for a long time, not knowing what she meant. Jasmine, on the other hand, was sizing him up from the side. She was still muttering to herself, if you twist off the head, the rest can be eaten, or something like that. Because he felt that it was a little strange, Su Shenxing decided to pretend that he didn't hear anything. Hey, I won't tease you anymore. Tell me what's going on today. You usually don't bear to use the bell-tolling talisman to find me. Sister Wan Er was a squirrel spirit in Crimson Heaven Mountain. Although she was only a little over 100 years old, she might not be very good in terms of magic, but because of the advantage of her race, all squirrels had become her eyes and ears. She was aware of everything that happened in the mountains, so she was more or less a know-it-all. Sister Wan Er, do you know that the mortals are going to develop Crimson Heaven Mountain into a scenic spot? Qin Xingyan asked directly. Of course I know. You didn't know because you went out for training. Now the monsters on the mountain are going crazy because of this. Sister Wan Er sighed. Today is the Dilia festival. Now the Huang family and the Chai family are taking the lead and planning to hold a banquet in Master Hong Ye's house. They hope that the monsters on the mountain can go and set the rules to decide whether to fight or make peace with the humans. The Dilia festival? Su Shenxing asked curiously. It was the first time that he heard of this festival. It's a festival unique to us monsters. Every 60 years, the essence of the moon will fall from the sky like rain. That is the legendary Dilia syrup. It is shaped like countless olives with thousands of golden threads and hangs down on the world. Plants and trees can become monsters when they receive the essence of the Dilia syrup. To us monsters, it is the best tonic. At the same time, it is an important time to increase the strength of our kind. Therefore, although there is no Dilia syrup in other years, we still hold a banquet to thank God. Sister Wan Er explained. Qin Xingyan didn't have any special reaction to this. It seemed that he had already heard about it. Sister Wan Er, are you going to the monster banquet too? Qin Xingyan asked. Of course. How can I miss such an important event? Sister Wan Er said matter-of-factly. But aren't you being hunted down by many monsters because you know a lot of secrets? The Huang family and the Chai family have said that this banquet has to put aside the grudges between the monsters and only discuss human affairs. Sister Wan Er looked very confident, and this banquet is held in Master Hong Ye's house. If someone really breaks the rules, the respected master won't sit by and do nothing. Can you take us with you? Since they wanted to persuade the monsters to move, talking to them one by one was undoubtedly the stupidest and most time-consuming way. If they could persuade them all at once during the monster banquet, that would be the best way. Sister Xingyan, I trust your character. It's not impossible. Sister Wan Er looked at Su Shenxing and realized that Su Shenxing and Emily didn't have any spiritual aura. They were just ordinary people, so she was relieved. How could two ordinary people turn the world upside down in front of a group of monsters? Really? Thank you so much, Sister Wan Er. Qin Xingyan was overjoyed. Don't thank me too early. Although I'll help you hide your human scent, you still have to keep a low profile. If other monsters, especially the Huang family and the Chai family, find out your true identities, even I won't be able to protect you. Do you understand? Sister Wan Er warned them seriously. No problem. Qin Xingyan subconsciously looked at Su Shenxing. He felt that with this human-shaped nuclear warhead around, the monsters wouldn't be able to do anything. Chapter 48. The monster feast of the Emperor Flow Festival would begin at night. Sister Wan Er also needed to prepare some things, so the three of them agreed to meet here in the evening. Although Su Shenxing and the others did not have anything to prepare, Emily, who was originally uninterested, was now in high spirits. Although the Bailu temple did not forbid meat and fish, it was still a Taoist temple. Naturally, the Taoists who cultivated their moral character would not eat fish and meat every meal. Emily was already tired of eating wild vegetables and was planning to find something else to change his taste. Finally, it was evening. Emily dragged Su Xinxing and Qin Xingyan back to the path. Sister Wan was already there waiting for them with a small package in her arms. Unlike before, Sister Wan was no longer in a human form. Her fluffy and huge squirrel tail peeked out from the waist of her Han costume, swaying comfortably. Her pointy squirrel ears were like cat ears, shaking from time to time. Emily had an impulse to pounce on her and touch her. Of course, this impulse was strangled to death by Su Xinxing, who grabbed her by the back of her collar. Here, put these on first. Sister Wan handed over 3 masks. Su Xinxing and the others took a look and found that the masks were a bit like the masks in the Peking opera, but the colorful paint on them was very strange. Just looking at it gave them a creepy feeling. These are masks of faceless monsters. Once you put them on, they can cover your human scent. Sister Wan continued to explain. Originally, I was going to look for masks of the god of covering face. It's like the god of death or the 99 gods with strange things on their faces. But those guys are more common in Fusang. It's not easy to find one in Huaxia. Su Xinxing and the others obediently followed her instructions and put the masks on their faces. As a result, Mo Li and Qin Xingyan hid their scent as usual. Only Su Xinxing's mask cracked in half. What's going on? Su Xinxing held the broken pieces of the mask and blinked innocently. Is there really a fake product like this? It looks like you are protected by some kind of power that makes you immune to all evil. This mask belongs to a monster after all. Furthermore, the monster's aura is very strong. Of course, it would be destroyed by that kind of power. Sister Wan looked at the broken mask and frowned. Su Xinxing could only smile bitterly. Due to his sacred sword, he indeed had such a buff on him. Curses like weaken, poison, and most other negative statuses were ineffective against him. Moreover, this buff was a passive skill, so there was no way for him to turn it off. In the end, Su Xinxing could only find a piece of yellow cloth and smear some of Sister Wan's aura on it. Then he tied it to his face and disguised himself as a yellow-turbaned strongman. He sneaked into the banquet as Sister Wan's summoned creature. After that, Sister Wan led the group to a huge maple tree. Wan the squirrel monster, pressed her hand on the bark of the tree and softly chanted a few words. Then she passed through the bark and disappeared into the tree. Su Xinxing and the others looked at each other and imitated Wan. They reached out their hands to touch the place where Wan disappeared. However, there was nothing in the place where the trunk should have been, as if there was an invisible door. After passing through the door on the maple tree, they officially arrived at the monster's territory. The moon was high in the sky and the monster's banquet had already begun. At first, Su Xinxing was shocked by the amazing number of monsters. Although it was only a street's worth of monsters, the current monster flow was comparable to that of the bazaar during the Qingming period in his memory. At the same time, there were stalls selling all kinds of snacks on the roadside, just like the bazaar. Occasionally, there were some small stalls selling herbs or other miscellaneous things. However, for some reason, there were no stalls selling things like ring throwing, darts, or catching goldfish for entertainment. It was a pity. However, when he thought about it, it was normal. After all, the customers here were monsters. Most of the monsters were, in a sense, little superhumans. If they really set up those kinds of entertainment stalls, the stall owner would go bankrupt in minutes. Another thing worth mentioning was, how much is this braised mushroom sauce? 5 yuan. Give me a skewer. Okay, thank you for your patronage. The currency circulating among the monsters was actually RMB. Su Xinxing had already mentally prepared himself for the possibility that they would use things like spirit stones as currency. When he expressed his doubts, Sister Wan held her stomach and laughed. Spirit stones are now more expensive than gold. Their brains must have been kicked by someone to use them to buy things like this. Perhaps the quality of the mask Sister Wan found was very good. Along the way they passed by countless monsters, but none of them realized that Su Xinxing and the others were humans. After walking for a while they arrived at the end of the street. At this time, Mo Li's hands were already filled with all kinds of food and toys. His mask was already tilted to one side and his mouth was stuffed full. At the end of the street was a large antique house. From the eaves and roof it looked like a Buddhist building. This is Master Hong Ye's residence. When you go in, be careful. It's best to keep your heads down as much as possible. Don't make eye contact with those big monsters, understand? While leading the group into the house, Sister Wan did not forget to remind them carefully. Su Shenxing reached out and grabbed Mo Li's left hand, which was still holding a bunch of cotton candy and water balls. Using her spiritual power, he sensed the interior of the house. In the end, he found that although there were many monsters inside, all of them combined were probably not as many as the flying tiger, Cheongqi, that he killed in Jiangjin. As soon as they entered the courtyard, many monsters looked at them. Fortunately, they only glanced at them for a moment before looking away. At this time, in the center of the courtyard, a blonde punk was confronting a shriveled, skinny old man. The brown-haired one is the current head of the Huang family, and the old man is the head of the Chai family. They are a family of weasels and a family of snakes. They are natural enemies. This time, if it weren't for the fact that humans wanted to take over Crimson Cloud's mountain, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to work together for the rest of their lives. Sister Wan led them to a corner, and while avoiding everyone's eyes, she took the time to explain to them, the man in the cultivation clothes sitting in the main seat is Master Hong Yi. He is the master of this forest and the most powerful big monster in Crimson Cloud's mountain. However, he is kind and has a high reputation among the monsters. As soon as she finished speaking, the blonde punk snorted coldly and roared at the shriveled old man with cold eyes in front of him. In short, no matter what you say, I won't move. Since a group of mere mortals dares to take over my territory, they should be prepared to suffer heavy casualties and go back with their tails between their legs. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.